And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink. Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points. No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there. But Coach, we have another half to play. I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that? Yes, Coach? Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. sterlingsoap.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At his apex, he used to have all of these, similar to Tyson, all these wild animals, like these animals. Right. One of which had like a 600-pound male lion in his backyard, right?
Uh-huh.
It said one time his brother came over to see him. The male lion got away and tried to attack his brother as he was coming to the door. George, looking out the window to the backyard, he runs out, obviously to protect his brother. They say he punched the lion. Boom! He punched a 600-pound male lion, full male. Man,
wow.
He punched the lion. And the lion just stopped and walked the other way like, never mind. I'm not. The lion was like, kind of like them Popeye, cartoons almost when he eat his spinach.
Right.
He'll hit the lion, and then he'll go up in the air. Then he come back down in the spring and scream. He's a set of luggage and suitcases now, and all of that. That's what it was like. That's how powerful he was, able to deter a fully grown and vicious lion with a single punch.
Sports from back in the day. From Atlanta, it's Dana on the mic, talking old school legends, bringing history to life. We go deep like a spiral in the Superdome. Back when athletes left the game due to talking alone. Jordan fadeaways, Jackie in the zone, Ali in the ring, man, he stood all alone. From the Negro Leagues to the ABA, we break it all down, yeah, the classic way. It's Charles from the district, straight out the boot. Southern University pride, repping truth in the booth. From Baton Rouge to the nation's capital, legends on deck. Yeah, we factual, tales of the greats, gold chains and all. Baseball, who dreams in that football brawl? No clickbait, no fluff, just the facts we say. It's historically speaking, sports strong back in the game. So sit back, tune in, and hit replay. It's historically speaking sports, the classic way.
Every great fighter brings something different to the ring. Some had lightning fast hands, others possessed granite chins. Some could make opponents miss by inches, while others broke them down with punishing body shots and ended fights with a single punch. So in this episode, we're asking a question boxing fans have debated for generations. If you could build the perfect boxer, whose traits would you choose? Hello once again, I'm Dana Augusta, and this is the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, a podcast that gives you the best of sports from back in the day. My co-host and resident boxing historian, Charles Combs, will be here shortly to offer his expertise and historical knowledge of the sweet science. We're not picking the greatest fighter of all time. We're creating the ultimate fighter by combining the best attributes from boxing's legends: Muhammad Ali's footwork, Mike Tyson's explosiveness, Marvin Hagler's chin, Floyd Mayweather's defense, Roberto Durán's inside fighting, George Foreman's power, they're all on the table. We'll break down every category from ring IQ to jab power, defense, conditioning, heart, body punching, and knockout instinct to see which legends own each piece of the perfect fighter. And of course, we're going to have a few laughs and of course debates along the way, because in boxing there are very few unanimous decisions. So this is an all-new edition of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, a member of the Sports History Network.
Hey there. Welcome to Music Meets Sports, where sports legends meet custom soundtracks. Founded by music producer Ronald Tyke Oliver, Music Meets Sports was created to bridge generations, educate fans, and celebrate the greatness of both current and former athletes. We craft original songs about heroes in basketball, football, baseball, boxing, and beyond, highlighting their struggles and victories. Across all musical genres, we reintroduce fans to their favorite athletes in a way they've never heard before. From Babe Ruth to Reggie White, from rising WNBA stars to timeless NFL great stream, or download our music now on Apple Music, Amazon, and Spotify. Visit musicmeetsports.org to explore the catalog, hear new releases, and join the movement that's preserving sports history, one song at a time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. I'm Dana Augusta, along with my co-host Charles Combs, coming to you on this Sunday night as we're going to be talking about a much anticipated episode from what I've been hearing on social media after I had posted the preview of what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I've had a lot of people waiting for this one. And so for tonight, we are here to talk about what we're going to be doing. And what we're doing is building the perfect boxer. And joining us once again is my co-host, Charles Combs. And Chuck, how you doing this evening? I know this has been a topic of something that you have been always wanting to talk about. So here we are. Tonight's the night. So as Betty Wright used to sing. So how you feeling tonight, man? And I know you're excited about this one.
Yes, sir. Or tonight's the night, like Redman used to say, baby. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, just looking forward to it. It's always good to get with you, talk fellowship,
right,
break bread with you, and talk a little shop, man. So
that's right.
Looking forward to it, man. We're going into the boxing realm, something that I've always had a lot of interest in, and something that I enjoy watching, discussing. So hopefully the listeners, they enjoy listening tonight, and hopefully they can learn something, and as usual, hopefully I can learn something as well.
All right. And that's what we do here, man, here at the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, is that this is going to be one of those episodes where I'm going to learn as much as, you do, because boxing is not necessarily my forte, so to speak, but at the same time, I'm always interested. I know the sport, but not as much as you do. So I just want to get that out of the way and let everybody know that little disclaimer about how that you're much more of the boxing enthusiast between the both of us. So what we're going to be doing, of course, is this. We're going to be building the perfect boxer. I mean, we put together several different attributes or traits that we're going to discuss, and we're going to be taking pieces of great boxers and putting this together. So some of the attributes that we've come up with in this sort of like this mad scientist lab that we constructed here tonight is the attributes are diligence, intimidation, marketability, which is charisma and promotion. And then we have fight adaptability, which we've broken down into four different traits, which is ring IQ, mental quickness, fight versatility, and diligence. Then we have hand speed, jab, left hook, right hand, overall punching power, fighting spirit, ring presence, and inside fighting, athleticism, a good chin, you got to have that, and punchcraft, which we kind of broke down into three different categories, which is counter shots, uppercuts, and body shots. So with all that being said, this is something, again, You came up with this idea. This was a topic that you came up with, and it's something that I find very interesting whenever anybody does anything like this. I find very interesting. So before we get into it, Chuck, what are your take on this before we get started?
Well, my take is we're going to talk about a lot of very good guys, great fighters. Some guys, many guys that we may know from recent years. I'm meaning since our childhood in the 80s.
Yeah.
Perhaps some guys that precede that particular time as well. But the funny thing it is about this list, even though we are compiling this list of different fighters, a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about, some of these guys, they could be in every single category.
That's right.
If you wanted
that's
to.
right.
But just for, easily at least 3 to 4 guys come to mind. Easily, they could literally be in every category. But obviously, for interest's sake and entertainment's sake, as well as kind of, the scope of the conversation, we want a bigger scope. So we want to talk about some different guys that will not only expound on the sweet science, but also, give some guys some credit, and some guys from yesteryear, give them a few kudos and flowers.
There you go. And again, this is a type of topic. And plus, here on the podcast, we don't necessarily talk about boxing all that much. And I thought that maybe that doing a boxing episode would be pretty cool, and that sort of thing. So without further ado, let's kick this off. Ding, ding, as they say, as the two fighters come out to battle. And we may have a little debate here every now and then, but, hey, what is a good podcast without some debate? So without further ado, we're going to start with the first category, which is diligence. And you have Floyd Mayweather and Bernard Hopkins as far as diligence. And what I mean by diligence, we're talking about elite conditioning and training discipline. You have Bernard Hopkins and Floyd Mayweather. Talk about that for a sec.
Yes, sir. Because, a lot of these fights, there are a lot of different things that goes into becoming an elite boxer, as well as competing and being very successful on the world-class level. And obviously, to me, discipline is one of the most important things, because when you get to that world-class level, everybody is talented. Everybody is good. So like a lot of times your fortunes may rest on your discipline and so forth. And what I mean by that is guys that just take their training very, very seriously, because most fights are won or lost in the gym, and perhaps even outside the gym when they're not fighting. And what I mean by that is like a typical training camp. It used to be 6 to 8 weeks. Nowadays it's more like 8 to 12, and like a lot of times they would use a lot of these fighters, they shed an incredible amount of weight, especially now. These guys now, because back in the days you had the original like starting lightweight, middleweight, light, heavyweight, and then below that. But now they've introduced a bunch of super and junior categories in these. So you have umpteen divisions now. But a lot of times, which as a result, these fighters, a lot of times, they'll walk around, like for instance, like a welterweight, for example, that's 147 pounds, right? A lot of these guys, they may walk around when they're not fighting around 175, 180. So in a used to be 6 to 8 weeks, but usually it's 8 to 12. You got to cut all of that weight and all of that to make the 147 pound limit to compete. But this is where Floyd Mayweather and Bernard Hopkins always excelled, because they took everything, their body, very seriously, even when they did not have a fight coming up. They would always go to the gym, even if it's just some light work, just to keep everything flowing. They were very diligent and disciplined in terms of what they ate. So as a result, they did not balloon up in weight in between fights. So as a result, like say for example, when Floyd Mayweather fought at 147, he would walk around at like maybe 152, 153 tops. Bernard Hopkins, He had 20 defenses to best Carlos Monzon's record for consecutive middleweight title defenses. He kind of did similar at that 160-pound limit. He would walk around right at that 160-pound limit. As a result, when they get to camp, a lot of guys, a lot of their contemporaries and opponents and rivals, they're using that as, in terms of what we call in the fight game, fat camps. The main purpose and the main objective of these camps is to lose the weight in order to make the weight limit. Whereas, okay, Floyd Mayweather, Bernard Hopkins, they're already, they're not in fighting shape, but they're already in good shape. They're already basically at the limit, and obviously over a 6-week period, as you intensify the training, you're naturally going to make weight. That's not going to be an issue. So as a result, they could spend a lot of that time, as opposed to just devoted to losing weight. It's strategical based, game plan based, tactical based, just watching film, nuances, just preparing for the opponent. So as a result, when fight night comes, they're so far ahead of their opponent until it's like crazy. And then even then, sometimes losing weight, that much weight in a short period of time, in a few weeks, that could leave you really, really dehydrated and weak. And then obviously you have to hydrate up after you weigh in, and then, and all of that. But this is where the advantage would come in at. They would come in, they're already used to being at the weight, so they're functioning. They have the right amount of water in their brain. Because like a lot of times when you dehydrate, you lose a lot of water in your brain too, which can make you more susceptible to power punches, concussions, getting knocked out, and etc. Because without that water in your brain hitting up against your skull, and you can become concussed more easily. That's where I have them at, because they always trained, even though they were world-class fighters, they were multi-weight champions, always atop the pound for pound list, and millions of dollars in their bank accounts. They always trained as if they were broke. Like Floyd Mayweather, he would famously, like, he's out at the club in Vegas, didn't drink or anything like that. He's drinking on water. They get out of the club at 4 a.m. He'll text his trainer, his uncle Roger Mayweather, and like, hey, all the sparring partners, everybody at the gym in the hour, 4 a.m. He got him out there. They're running. He trained all hours of the day, or sometimes he'll be at home 11:30 at night. Hey, everybody, let's go to the gym. I feel like sparring. I mean, he just. And then Hopkins was the exact same way, just always super duper disciplined. And he always noted that his contemporaries, his main rival was Roy Jones and James Toney. They were more talented to me, but I watched what I put into my body, because I didn't have the same talent that they had. So I couldn't afford to make those type of mistakes, especially being more like a blue collar type of fighter, even though he was highly skilled as well.
Yeah. Floyd Mayweather, currently 50-0, won 15 major world championships in 5 different weight classes, from super featherweight all the way up to light middleweight. Boxing Rec records him as the 3rd greatest boxer of all time. Named the 2010s Fighter of the Decade by the Boxing Writers Association of America, and referred to as one of the greatest defensive boxers of all time. Hence defense. Talk about that a little later on. Training, which you talked about. High volume, fight specific calisthenics. In other words, a lot of exercises, a lot of that specifically deals with fighting, sparring, that sort of thing. Extreme cardiovascular endurance and hours of technical boxing, i.e. what you talked about, coming back from the club and going spar at all hours of the day and night. As far as Bernard Hopkins is concerned, undisputed middleweight champ from 2001 to 2005, lineal heavyweight champ from 2011 and 2012, multiple world championships in 2 different weight classes. He's a very defensive boxer, as is Floyd Mayweather, but also career lasted from 1988 through 2016, beat Felix Trinidad in 2001 in the 12th round knockout. Extreme training discipline, which we talked about, year-round consistency, which you talked about. They may not have had the talent at James Toney and Roy Jones, but he was constantly consistent. 2 to 3 daily workouts of intense stretching, clean diet without all-season weight yo-yoing. So with all of that talking, you talked about Bernard Hopkins and Floyd Mayweather. They're pretty much, from what I'm gathering, they're pretty much two sides of the same coin, pretty much. Floyd Mayweather, of course, everybody knows him for his flamboyance. Bernard Hopkins, not so much. He's more of a, blue collar type of guy that you talked about. And that served him well. And of course, Floyd Mayweather's, that goes without saying, his reputation precedes himself. You know what I'm saying? So that's a good choice. For diligence, we have Floyd Mayweather and Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah. And just to kind of put a nice bow on it, for example, right? Floyd, they both kind of had two careers under two different personas. Because like early in Floyd's career, he was, coming out of the 96 Olympics. They had all kind of good guys. David Reed, Fernando Vargas, Zab Judah was on that team.
Right.
All kind of Antonio, the late shout out Antonio, the Magic Man Antonio Tarver, to his recent induction to the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I saw him in Charlotte a couple of years ago in the plane in the airport, but we were grounded all night and had to be in Charlotte all night. And I saw him the next morning, so he was stuck there. And I saw him in the line. I wanted to speak to him, but I was like, we've all had a long night having to sleep wherever in the airport, so I didn't want to.
You didn't want to bother him.
I didn't bother him, so I didn't do that. But speaking of Hopkins, right? He, after losing to Roy Jones in 1993, he shortly won the title by beating Keith Holmes. He had been the champion for like 8 years up until 2001. Don King put together a middleweight tournament. They had guys like Keith Holmes, William Joppy, and then Felix Trinidad was moving up from 154 to partake in said tournament. So obviously the prohibitive favorite was Felix Trinidad going into that fight. And I'm only bringing this up for one reason. They got to the finals. The fight was supposed to be Saturday, September 15th, 2001 in Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
But that Tuesday coming up to the fight, 9/11 happened.
Right.
9/11 happened that Tuesday coming up to the fight.
I remember that. That's right. That's right. I do remember that.
The fight had to be canceled for 2 weeks. It was postponed for 2 weeks because obviously that was an unprecedented situation. So that night, that was really kind of like the first mega sporting event after 9/11 in New York, pretty much.
Right.
So that night, like I told you before, there's nothing like fight night in New York. And they came, I still remember Felix Trinidad came with his entrance, had on all the red, white, and blue Puerto Rican stuff. The Puerto Ricans were going crazy.
Right.
Bernard Hopkins came out with his customary version of his executioner mask. And he came out with America the Beautiful, and the person who sings the best version of America the Beautiful, bar none, no discussion, Ray Charles.
Okay.
He came to the ring that night. I was so nervous. This was the days when you had these pay-per-view fights. These guys get the best against the best. You literally did not know what was going to happen. So I used to be so nervous. And I mean, Hopkins just put on, at age 36, they thought he was going to be too old. I still remember being in a house full of people, my brother included. They were like, they're going to whoop out and say, man, executioner going to pimp this dude tonight. I'm telling you. And he put on Masterclass, and they both put on a great show, and he won. And I'm only bringing that up to, that was his moment where he got catapulted into stardom, which eventually down the line led to a middleweight title defense versus Oscar De La Hoya, in which he stopped De La Hoya with a body shot. Left hook to the body, stopped him with that. And just a great night of boxing, and two great fighters, and some guys and some people that we may kind of discuss a little bit later, because as I mentioned at the outset, a lot of these guys could be in multiple categories.
Okay, next category that we have, and these are two guys that I personally know a bit about, and two guys that I love dearly. We're talking about intimidation. That's the next thing. And there's two guys. These two guys are the absolute personification of intimidation, and that is Sonny Liston and George Foreman of the 1970s. Because you have to make that distinction. with George Foreman. You have the George Foreman of the 1970s who didn't talk much, didn't engage with the media. He was all serious. He was stone-faced and everything else, as opposed to the George Foreman of the late 80s, early 90s, a little bit gregarious, but he still had that intimidation factor, even in the 90s, I believe. But the George Foreman of the 70s was downright scary, but there was no other person more scary in boxing, at least in my opinion, than Sonny Liston. Talk about that.
Okay. Now, as a precursor to all of our listeners, I'm pretty sure people that are going to be listening to this are going to be slightly surprised, because most people feel that peak area Mike Tyson is the most intimidating boxer that they've ever seen. Right. But I've always told people, okay, if you think Mike Tyson is intimidating, take whatever that is and multiply it by 100, and you might get the Sonny Liston and 70s version of George Foreman. Okay, let's start with Sonny Liston first. Just a few things, because sometimes you have to kind of describe what sometimes what happened in life to them is kind of what led to what they ultimately became. Now, in the case of Sonny Liston, obviously he's great world champion. Like, honestly, for greatest jab, he could be on the list. I've seen him break people. He and Foreman. I saw him break a guy's shoulder. He jabbed the guy to the shoulder and blew the guy's entire shoulder out with a jab. I've seen Sonny Liston break a guy's jaw with a jab. Break his nose with a jab. He just was very intimidating. Now, in terms of when he came up, his father kind of beat him relentlessly and mercilessly when he was growing up. And he said pretty much the only thing that his father ever contributed to him was just the beatings. That's pretty much nothing else tangible. No other tangible contributions were attributed to his father, because that's all he ever did. So as a result of that, he wound up with a lot of scars that you could still see visible when he was grown. And then obviously, usually guys who are not getting the type of love and the nurture at home, they usually go to where they can receive some type of love. And a lot of times that is in the form of the streets, in the form of gangs. So he had moved to St. Louis, became a gang member. And by the St. Louis police, he was known as the Yellow Shirt Bandit, and he was convicted, sentenced to 5 years in the Missouri State Penitentiary. Mm-hmm. And he took up boxing, which led to an early release. And then following brief amateur career, he turned pro to gain the heavyweight title of the world. He knocked out Floyd Patterson, trained by Cus Amato, to win the heavyweight championship in 1962 at Comiskey Park in Chicago. Beat him in the rematch the next year. Now, a lot of his intimidation was not only due to his demeanor in the ring and the fact that he could break bones and his stoic demeanor and his hard punching, but a lot of it was due to a lot of his life outside of boxing, because he had mafia ties. He had ties to a renowned and notorious racketeer, so he had mafia ties. And then also he used to always get into these fights with police often, since he had such ties. And one time in St. Louis, near his home in 1956, a policeman confronted him. It resulted in Liston breaking the officer's knee and gashed his face while taking his gun. Now, how you break a man's knee, I don't. How you break a man's knee, I don't know. And so, and the onlookers of said confrontation mentioned several times that a lot of the nightsticks, they were hitting him with nightsticks over Liston's skull, but to no avail, because they hit him across the skull. The nightsticks were breaking left and right. They were breaking left and right when they were hitting him with the nightsticks, and they just couldn't do anything with them, which kind of added to his invincible aura, which pretty much, which led to 1963. A lot of people, this loquacious young buck, Cassius Clay Loudmouth, aka, love this name, the Louisville Lip. I love that. They were like, man, this guy is crazy. He's gonna Sonny Liston is going to kill this kid. But deep down secretly, it became known after the fact that Liston was so used to people being afraid of him that a lot of these antics, and we came to know later that a lot of this stuff Ali would do, he was kind of like the, what do you call it, the originator of, doing things just for promotion,
Right.
Like you remember, like, for example, like in Rocky IV, when Apollo Creed was arguing with Drago, his wife, and his analyst, you're a history chump, you're a history chump, you're a history. And then as soon as he turns around to walk off, he talks to Rocky calmly, how did I do? Like he's just, he's
just a promoter, right?
Just promotion. I'm not, but Sonny actually thought the guy was crazy based on his antics and all of that. Because one time, Ali's blood pressure shot all the way up to a level that he nearly fainted because he became so irate during, I want to say during the weigh-in, perhaps.
I think it was during the weigh-in in Miami
and
Beach.
all of that. So then that eventually led to the the win in 1963 of Ali defeating him, and then to put a bow on in terms of the mafia ties. And I hope I'm not taking some of your thunder. Some of the mafia ties. The rematch, Ali hit him with a short right hand in the second round, and down he go, and he didn't beat the count. But a lot of people it's always been debated whether or not that was a phantom punch or not.
Right. Yeah.
And all of that, because he went down in the second due to his mafia ties. It's like, man, come on, man. So some people didn't see it, but looking at it, it was a really short right hand. But it's something we'll never know.
Yeah, it's something that we will never know. And with Sonny Liston, he died in 1971 under mysterious circumstances, because his wife found him in his home in Vegas, and no one knows really what he died of. And it was under very mysterious circumstances. As far as Sonny Liston's career, 50-4 with 39 knockouts, known for his strength and formidable jab and long reach of 84 inches. One of the most intimidating boxers of all time. Became heavyweight champion in 1962 against the knockout of Floyd Patterson. Brutal childhood, which you talked about, and his emotionless demeanor. George Foreman, who we're about to go into in a second, said of Sonny Liston, he was no doubt the scariest human being I've met in the ring. The only man to make me back up consistently. That's said by our next person that we're going to talk about as far as intimidation. Right around a little bit after this, in roughly the same time period, we're talking about George Foreman of the 1970s. So talk about, pre-George Foreman grill, after his flag waving at the 68 Olympics. Talk about Mr. Foreman.
Okay, George Foreman, 1970s version. Now, he was so intimidating and dark in the 70s that when he became so beloved and just a big teddy bear and just an overall larger-than-life personality, being jolly and a representation of when you get older, you can still accomplish some things, not only in life, but the athletic realm. He was so intimidating that a lot of people that knew him from the 70s time frame were very, very skeptical of that about face in the 90s. They definitely questioned the genuineness and the sincerity of the 90s personality. Now in the 70s, now I think in part due to the fact that Ali had returned post exile and fight of the century against Joe Frazier, lost and all of that as loquacious as Ali was, he was the antithesis of that. He was very quiet, very reserved, very honestly, you look in his eyes, like the gleam that you saw in his eyes in the 90s, the gleam and the love that you saw in his eyes in the 70s, in the 90s, you look in his eyes in the 70s, it was just dark and deadness. It looked like just darkness in his eyes in the 70s. And he was very dark. He was very brooding personality in the 70s. He didn't, he was aloof. He was antisocial. I can relate to that at times.
Right.
He didn't like to talk to the press. He was rarely available to the press. He didn't enjoy talking to the press and things like that. And he was never, never welcoming of the press either. So, right after the fight of the century, they go down to Kingston, Jamaica. Joe Frazier versus George Foreman, who had won the gold medal. What was it at the 1968 Olympics? He had won the gold. He had won gold. This is in the days when they didn't used to wear headgear either. So,
right.
He knocked Joe Frazier down 6 times.
Yes.
And I still remember. Obviously, I wasn't born then, or I was very young. Watching the fight, he's hitting him, and it's like he's barely hitting him, and it's like he's like a
staggering.
Guy, like a dad with a little 2-year-old son. The way Joe Frazier was flying everywhere, and I still remember his son Marvin Frazier saying, who would later challenge twice for the heavyweight championship of the world in the 80s, both against Larry Holmes and Mike Tyson, saying at first, "Okay, Daddy, quit playing around, because he thought he was playing around at first. Then 6 knockdowns later, he's like, "Good Lord," and he was just this dark and brooding and destructive guy. Then after that, he fought Ken Norton, who just had beaten Ali the year before and breaking Ali's jaw in the process.
Yeah.
Ran through Ken Norton in two rounds. Knocked him out in 2 rounds. You know what I mean? And and to your point that you mentioned at the outset, he said in terms of his style, he was always Sonny Liston was his idol in terms of not only fighting, but in terms of how you carry yourself, being intimidating. He was just a total wrecking machine in the 70s. So much so that when Ali signed to fight him in 1975 in Zaire, people likened it to the suicide, basically. It was like, man, Ali, he's going to get killed tonight, and all of that. And then, we know what wound up happening and all of that. And then he lost to Ali. And then I still remember Howard Cosell on ABC Wide World of Sports seeing this slightly after he lost to Ali. Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali were the commentators. He had a fight against 5 different boxers, all at the same. He'll knock out one, another would come in. He knocked him out, another would come in. He knocked him out, and then Ali was like, "You can't beat me, George. You can't beat me." And George, and I think what Ali did, and I think what Ali realized, what he pulled off that night. That was a one-time thing. He would never do that again. And I think he smartly never gave George a rematch. He like, "Oh, heck no, I'm not giving George a rematch," because, the rope-a-dope isn't probably going to work twice, and them punches that he had to take in order to pull that off, who wants to stand in the way of that again? Now, just before I turn it over to you, just to talk about how powerful he was, right?
Right.
At his apex, he used to have all of these, kind of similar to Tyson, all these wild animals, like these animals. One of which had like a 600-pound male lion in his backyard, right? They said one time his brother came over to see him. The male lion got away and tried to attack his brother as he was coming to the door. George, looking out the window to the backyard, he runs out, obviously to protect his brother. They say he punched the lion. Boom! He punched a 600-pound male lion, full male. Man, he punched the lion, and the lion just stopped and walked the other way, like, never mind. I'm not. The lion was like, kind of like them Popeye, cartoons almost, when he eat his spinach. He'll hit the lion, and then he'll go up in the air, then he come back down in the spring and scream, he's a set of luggage and suitcases now, and all of that. That's what it was like. That's how powerful he was, able to deter a fully grown and vicious lion with a single punch. So yeah.
Talking about George Foreman, 1970s. This is just the decade of the 70s, Ron. What I'm about to say. 45-2 during the decade of the 70s with 42 knockouts. Okay, 6'3", 220 pounds. And Ken Norton, you talked about the Ken Norton fight and also the famous Joe Frazier fight in Jamaica. Ken Norton and Joe Frazier both admitted his strength was nothing they had ever encountered before. So that says it all right there. Okay, so we got intimidation with Sonny Liston, and we have George Foreman. Now, the next trait we're going to talk about, and you mentioned this while talking about just now, marketability. And when you have a boxer, you got to be able to be marketable, okay, to sell to the masses, to get the pay-per-views, to get, people talking about the fight. And there's no two boxers that you could possibly have better than Muhammad Ali and Floyd Mayweather. So just from a pure marketability standpoint, talk about that for a minute.
Well, with Muhammad Ali, he was just naturally being himself because they had never seen anything like it. A guy who was poetic. He was spitting bars in the interviews,
right?
and talking stuff. He wanted to go to heaven. So I took him. I took him in 7. And
right.
And you had never heard of this stuff before.
No.
It was unprecedented. So and then obviously in the social climate of the time,
right.
Here you go. You got this tall, handsome, muscular, good-looking guy that can not only take your woman with his mouthpiece, but he could beat you up too.
Right.
So certain people, and okay, and here is historically speaking, sports. We don't talk race a lot, but we have to tell the truth.
Right.
The truth must be told.
Right.
A lot of his marketability, even though he won the gold medal, and then when he came home, he was refused service after fighting and representing the country and winning the gold medal. He was refused service when he got back home in Louisville. He took it and threw it into the Ohio River. Took his gold medal and slang it into the Ohio River. So, and then I think as he embarked upon his boxing career, he discovered quite quickly, and something that other boxers adapted, as well as other sports adapted, most notably pro wrestling.
Right.
That love and hate is the exact same. It's two ends
of the same emotion.
Of the exact same coin.
Right.
So he quickly discovered that due to his brashness, his cockiness, he could look good. He had a beautiful fighting style, which was really unorthodox for a heavyweight. Because a lot of times he's leave his hands down, but he was so fast that it didn't matter. So he quickly discovered that people would pay, like he famously say, he'd say, 100 people pay to see me, but 99% pay to see me get beat because they think I talk too much.
Right. And you can say the same thing about Floyd Mayweather too, in this very same thing, because both fighters, I mean, it's a word that I don't particularly like using, but at the same time, it is so true that both of these fighters are very polarizing. Half the people that's watching their fights want to see them win. The others 50% want to see them lose. There is nobody whenever they fought, there was nobody that actually said, okay, I'm going to watch the fight just for entertainment's sake. No, you had a rooting interest, whether you liked them or you hated them. That's like the essence of boxing marketability right there, in my opinion.
Correct. And, like you said, you don't care why they pay.
They just pay.
They pay. As long as you pay. I don't care why you pay, as long as you pay. So
that's like some people say that the best publicity is publicity. Whether it's good publicity or bad publicity, all publicity is good publicity. It doesn't matter. Your name's being out there, and that's the same thing the way these two guys, conducted themselves as far as like marketing their fights and everything else, because they understood half the population that's tuning in want to see me win. The other half want to see my teeth get knocked out. Right.
Correct.
And that's exactly the way they sold themselves, doing their careers.
Correct. And so like a lot of times he just started to expertly play into that, and then just happenstance, as well as his personal development, as well as social occurrences, just continue to like throw like gasoline on the fire. Like, for example, once he became heavyweight champion, he changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of people still, his mama, like they quipped in Coming to America. His mama called him Clay, so I'm gonna call him Clay. And things like that. And I still remember, who is it? Is it Ernie Terrell? He's he refused to call him by his name. He kept calling him Ernie. He kept calling him
fight. It was him, and it was also Oscar Bonavena who did the same thing.
Correct.
But Ernie Terrell was basically, he refused to knock him out because he just wanted to make him suffer. He could have knocked him out like in the 4th or 5th round, but he wanted to go the entire distance and basically torture him for basically calling him Clay, doing the weigh-ins and the lead up to the fight.
Correct. So he just did that, and people, as a result, they really got mad at how he's merciless and all of that, because he carried the dude. But anyway, long story short, then eventually, the Vietnam issue, the induction to the army came in. He refused that on
religious grounds.
On religious grounds. So that was not a popular decision. And then, he was exiled for 3 years. And then when this thing between he and Joe Frazier started, by the way, those 3 years were probably the last 3 years of his prime, because when he had came back, he no longer had the consistent swift speed, footwork, and all of that against Joe Frazier, and then lost because, like we talk about Jordan with hair on his head.
Yes.
like them films when he got that perfect crew cut and it's in black and white. That film is in black and white. That dude beats Joe Frazier inside of 6 rounds, no problem.
Right.
No problem.
I truly believe that.
That guy,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I say that guy blitzes Joe Frazier, no problem at all. Now Cassius Clay would have obliterated Joe Frazier, no problem whatsoever. But he had lost a few things. He had lost a few things during his exile.
Yeah. Muhammad Ali, 56-5, just a little snapshot of his career. Everybody know this. 3-time heavyweight champion, but this natural showman, charisma out the wazoo, transcended the sport of boxing to become a global presence, social and societal impact, and most marketable athlete of the 20th century. So with all that being said, Floyd Mayweather, we talked about him and his marketability, his brand identity, his money, transformed himself from pretty boy Floyd to Floyd Money Mayweather, and of course his outstanding pay-per-view success. And if you have not seen it, anybody that's out there listening, if you have not seen the Ken Burns documentary on Muhammad Ali, it's like 3 parts, I think it is, 2 or 3 parts. It is one of the coolest boxing documentaries you could ever see. I'm a big Ken Burns fan, but at the same time, his about Jack Johnson and the one about Muhammad Ali is chef's kiss as far as how good it is. It goes really in depth, and I learned some stuff about Ali I thought I knew, but I didn't know. And it really goes in depth. And if you have not watched it, go watch it. Hopefully, Mr. Burns is listening and he'll send the check in the mail. So anyway.
Okay. Now,
go ahead.
Now, also, before I go on to Floyd, another thing that's must watch if you want to kind of get some more insight on Ali is the When We Were Kings movie.
Yes.
That was in the what was that? Probably mid-90s, 96-ish. Yeah. I know the Fugees and the Tribe Called Quest had a song that was off the sidetrack. It was a banger too. I remember that. Ghetto Messiah. That was hidden too. So anyway, this was like a documentary that kind of chronicled the entire promotion and the entire allure of the Ali Foreman fight in the 70s. It follows the fighters, the press conferences, all of that. And then it was kind of like this thing that Don King expertly came up with in terms of like a Black American return or pilgrimage back to Africa and back
Right.
home. So as a result, it wound up being all of these musical events. And
Yeah.
most notably James Brown, boy James, man, James came out there, man, like he shot out of a cannon that night, man. Like,
Yeah.
James my favorite. James
Uh-huh.
was cooking. James was cooking that night. Cause that one
Right.
James was still at the tail end of his prime there, man.
Uh-huh.
So you had all of that and following Foreman, and then the fight and the outset of the fight itself, and the hope that it represented for like the Africans in poverty, as well as the African Americans of a similar plight.
Right. And you talked about, Floyd Mayweather, his marketability and things of that nature when it comes to him. He is sort of like, he's not as polar, in my opinion, he's not as charismatic as Ali, in my opinion, but he does essentially the same things as Muhammad Ali, but he does it in a different way. And it makes him at least a little bit more charismatic in this day and age. And he's kind of like understands how to be marketable in the 21st century when it comes to boxing.
Yes, well, he was a guy, he kind of almost took a page, ironically, because I mentioned a few moments ago that Ali was pioneering in that regard, and that many other sports, many other fighters, including most notably pro wrestling, kind of followed suit. The irony of it is, I feel that Floyd Mayweather kind of followed the pro wrestling, and I could see a lot of parallels between his Money Mayweather character and the Nature Boy Ric Flair,
Right.
the heel version of his persona. Because like for example, you remember you mentioned the two different eras of Pretty Boy Floyd and Money Mayweather. I mentioned before I think he won the bronze. He was cheated, but I think he won the bronze in 1996. They had guys like Fernando Vargas, David Reed. I mentioned before Zab Judah, Antonio Tarver was on that. Antonio Tarver was on that team. Guys like that. And when he first started out under Bob Arum, Top Rank Boxing, who, even though they worked with black fighters, most of the time they most successfully promote Mexican American or Mexican fighters, or Latino fighters. Right. They usually promote, that ethnicity the best, as opposed to the Black American fighters. But when he first started out, he was Pretty Boy Floyd. He was the smiling everyday kid draped around the American flag, and I think they were trying to promote him kind of similarly to Sugar Ray Leonard, because they had a lot of similar attributes at the time in terms of their fighting skill set: blazing hand speed, blazing foot speed, good defense, great head movement, so forth. Very good power. Because see, like a lot of people talk about Floyd Mayweather couldn't punch. That Pretty Boy Floyd era, Floyd was getting them out of there, man. He was getting them up. He was getting them out of it. Floyd was getting them up out of there, man. I'm telling you. But over the time, he was notorious for having hand issues. So he would always have hand issues. So as a result of that, over time, as well as moving up in weight and fighting naturally bigger guys, he kind of had to adapt his fighting approach a little bit. But on back to him, he was the All-American guy and all of that. And even though he was getting knockouts, winning championships at a very young age and all of that, he wasn't a big star, nor he was a star, but not a superstar, nor pay-per-view attraction. He was far in the dust, but behind guys. At the top at that time was Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield. That's when the heavyweight champion of the world was still probably the most notable figure in the sport. Then you had the Golden Boy Oscar De La Hoya. You had the aforementioned Felix Trinidad. You had guys like Fernando Vargas. Roy Jones was out there. So it was a lot of guys that were out there in terms of notoriety and marketability that were ahead of him in the queue. So over time, after he moved to 140, he started the Money Mayweather persona, sort of like in wrestling, a heel turn. You know, sort of like a heel turn where I tried to be the pretty boy Floyd, the all-American boy, the boy next door. That didn't gravitate. But as I mentioned before, a lot of times boxing can be, I'm not going to say it, obviously boxing has some racism components in it, but I think a lot of times boxing can be more tribal than anything. Because obviously, like, okay, if you're a white kid watching on TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to inspire you, or who are you going to gravitate to? Like if you see a nice, somebody like a gentleman, Jerry Cooney, knocking guys out left and right, of course, a white kid from Boston would be enamored with that and would gravitate to that.
Yeah.
Whereas people like us, you know, you see somebody like a James Toney, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns. Of course, you
gravitate towards that.
Sugar Ray, he not in the ring. He in the suits, always looking smooth, always looking like $1 million. Of course, a young black kid from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, such as me, would be enamored with that. Of course, you know what I mean. So I think what he realized, since they weren't enamored with him, okay, I'm gonna become the person that pretty much everybody hates. Nobody hates like the loudmouth, throwing his money in your face all the time, the loudmouth braggadocio, and on top of that, the black guy who's supremely talented and all of that, and talk about how great he is and how much money he has. Because you know, you remember, like I don't know how it was when you were coming up. I'll never forget my best friend at the time, rest in peace, Arthur Lang Jr. I was 7 going into the 7th grade. He had went to another school before that, right? But he was always the guy. My parents didn't have a lot of money. His parents always got him whatever he wanted, but he would always come over if he had a pair of new shoes. You remember the old school kangaroos back in the days that had the pouches in the shoes. He had a pair of them. He come to my house. He used to get on my mama's nerves. My mama hated him. You know.
Oh, really? He's one of those.
He'd pick at his shoes. He keep lifting his foot up, tangling with his shoes, because he wants you to notice and say something about the shoes, right?
Right.
So, you know, but you know, and I know, nobody, that guy is hated.
Right.
He went, we got on the bus, and I'm not lying. We went to my school, Claiborne Elementary School. We went to my school, man. And you know how you be in the playground before the bell rings for you to go to class.
Right.
I am not lying, D, when I tell you, it wasn't even 5 minutes, man. It wasn't even 5 minutes. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie to you. I still remember, right? It was a cat named David Williams. I still remember. He didn't have, first day of school, you have your new clothes on. He didn't have any new clothes. He had whatever. And I'm not going to lie. He's the only guy I've ever seen. He's the only person I've ever seen, man. Because I've never seen him as an adult, and I never saw him out the elementary school again. He had a completely flat nose. I don't think he even had a nose bone. His nose was completely flat almost, man. And I'm with my friend Arthur. We used to call him Nunu. First thing he says, look at him, look how dirty he is, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, man, because I said, man, hey, what's up, David? You talk to your friends.
Right.
He talking. I said, meet my friend Nunu and stuff. He stayed next door to me. And he started talking about the dude's clothes and how he looked and all of that. And 2 seconds later, bow. Bow right in the eye. And he's on the ground scrambling and crying. He look, I'm like, dude, I told you not to do that. I told you don't do that. And you did it. But anyway, nobody hates nobody. That guy is hated by everybody.
Right.
And he knew that. So what he would intentionally do is antagonize people and all of that, and then whoop them. And then if people would say, well, you need to fight this guy, that guy, or whatever, he would avoid him just to piss him off. He wouldn't even fight him, right? So, and then what he also expertly did I hope I'm not being too long-winded, but what he also expertly did was he would always fought. He would always fight on a Latino, most likely a Mexican opponent on his fight dates two times a year would be in May for Cinco de Mayo.
Right.
And then he would always fight someone else of either Latino or Mexican descent in September for Mexican Independence Day weekend.
Right.
But then obviously with
you don't have a lot of people watching.
With Mexican fans, not only do they hate the loud braggadocios black guy and everybody paying money of all other ethnicities and a lot of black people too, hoping that he get his comeuppance and get his mouth shut. But nothing irritates a Mexican fan more than a defensive guy that uses footwork and slip punches. He's running. Won't you stand toe to toe and just sling it out? Like, no, man, you don't have no boxing. You can't box. You don't have no boxing skills. You don't have no forward. You know, kind of like how Adonis Creed did in the second one. They just preparing for the second fight against Drago's son. They each put a foot in the tire, and that's how they want to fight. You stand there, you let me hit you. Ducking, slipping punches, parrying punches, that's considered running. So he would whoop them all, and then eventually he fought their biggest hope, Manny Pacquiao, beat him too. Now, just like Ali and Frazier, I gotta say this too.
Right.
Pretty Boy Floyd would have knocked Manny out inside 8 rounds too. Like Floyd was washed up. Floyd was well past his best. Because, Floyd used to put them 3, 5, and 7 punch combinations together like water in them Pretty Boy Floyd days.
Right.
But them combinations became 1 or 2 at a time because, as I told you before, he was fighting naturally bigger guys that could hit harder and were stronger. So he was more cognizant of that. But then also his hand issues as well. But Pretty Boy Floyd would have dusted Manny Pacquiao off too. Trust me on this.
Okay. Moving on to fight adaptability. Now, this is the one that we kind of broke down, to ring IQ, mental quickness, fight versatility, and defense. Okay, for these, you have Floyd Mayweather for ring IQ, mental quickness, and defense. Okay, but for ring IQ, other than Floyd Mayweather, you have Terrence Crawford. Let's talk about Terrence.
Terrence Crawford, man. Terrence Bud Crawford. Terrence Bud got it out the mud Crawford. But just to give you a little background on him, he wasn't highly noted or highly celebrated when he turned pro. He was relatively an unknown. He was fighting for top rank. He was riding away in all of that. But name you may have heard before, former champion, current Hall of Famer, former ESPN commentator Timothy Bradley, in preparation for his first fight with Manny Pacquiao, he needed a southpaw to come in to give him some work in preparation for said fight. Now, Terrence, he's an ambidextrous fighter. He can fight equally well out of the orthodox stances as well as unorthodox southpaw. He comes in there on a day's notice. He said he didn't have nobody with him, no corner, no nothing, giving him instructions. He tore him to shreds. Terrence whooped him and tore him to shreds. He like, who the hell is this dude? So, so he go back home, lick his wounds, right? He comes back the next day to spar. He's like, okay, I'm going to turn it up. I'm going to get him this time. He comes, he fights Terrence again. Terrence fights him a completely different way and whoops him again. You know what I mean? Like with no, because usually you have someone in your corner, you throw that jab. There you go, that body shot. He said he didn't have any of that. He didn't have no waterman. He didn't have a cut man. He didn't have a trainer. It was just him. And he went in there. And so he was like, after that, he was like, man, who are you, man? Like, just, he say, dude, you are a world champion, man. And Terrence looked perplexed. He say, man, trust me, you are a world champion. So he say, man, whoever got you, I'll buy you out your contract, man. You the goods. But I think he wound up with Bob Arum started putting more promotion and money behind him, and then the rest is history. But anyway, about Terrence Crawford, man, he's the rare current athlete that you could dump in 1960 and he would be just as competitive. You could dump him. I'm not saying he would win. You could dump him in 1970. He's right there. You could dump him in 1980 right there with them 4 Kings. He's right there with him. I'm telling you. He's right there with him. That's how good he is. He's right there with them. Because most of the time, especially in boxing, nothing has fallen farther in terms of skill level and ability and knowledge in all of sports than perhaps boxing. And basketball is probably second.
Right.
But you could drop him in a different era, and he's just a guy. You name it, he can do it. Hand speed, he can do it. Punching power with either hand, he can do it. Head movement, he can fight off the back foot. He can fight off the front foot. He can bang inside. He's a great body puncher with either hand. He can if you need him to box, he can box. He can box as well. So in terms of his ring IQ, he is so smart, man. He's just like a guy. They say he's a slow starter, but he's literally like one of these computer programs. I've seen him do it over and over again. He'll fight a guy be touching him up with a certain shot the first couple of rounds. Then after the first couple of rounds, after he's downloaded all of the information, okay, this is what the guy can do. This is what he's not good at. He'll just make all of these adjustments. Now the guy looks like world champion, world class, world championship fighter. He looks the same as if I was trying to fight him. That's how he makes it look. He makes it look so bad. He once famously said, because they talk about his resume. He said, "You fight nobodies." He say, "I don't fight nobodies. I just make them look like nobody." So I make him look like nobody. He's just a brilliant fighter in terms of ring IQ. Now, in terms
and also his mental quickness. You can talk about that as well.
In terms of mental quickness, right? Like, okay, Terrence and Floyd both, because they're both in this category. Yeah. Terrence and Floyd both, right? They're very fast. Yeah. But they have people that are faster than them. Like, for example, when Floyd fought Manny, like, you run off a 5-punch combination, Manny can probably do it faster than Floyd could, especially at that stage. And when Floyd fought Zab Judah, that was certainly the case for the first 4 rounds, because you remember Zab was lightning. Even though Floyd was fast, Zab Judah was lightning fast in terms of his hand speed. Mm-hmm. But mental quickness, like I always felt, and I got to give this to a guy that I've always followed his mailbags through the years, and he's a world championship trainer. I was at a fight at George Mason University 10 years ago when his fighter, his protege, Julian J. Rock Williams won the 154-pound championship over Jared Hurd from DC. And I didn't get a chance to talk to him because I was too scared to talk to him. He's 20 feet from me. But he's a guy, he's always had these mailbags from, he used to be on Boxing Talk, then he's a trainer. He'd be on TV. He's always said, and I've always gotten this from him, that speed is in the body, quickness is in the mind. Right. Like you get a lot of these guys that are faster than Terrence and Mayweather, but mentally they know what they're looking at, so they're 3 steps ahead. Right. They're 3 steps ahead at all times. Soon as you get ready to fire off that left hook, bang, right hand counter, or he slips and rolls out of there because he can see it. He can see it before you even do it. Right. And because he's processing it so fast. So even though you're actually faster than him physically, he's so quick in the mind and can do it and can anticipate things so quickly and make adjustments on the fly so quickly that he's 5 steps ahead of you the entire night, both of them.
Right. So for Terrence Crawford, world champion at the lightweight, junior middleweight, welterweight, and junior welterweight weight classes, known as one of the smartest and most versatile fighters of his era. Okay. And along with that, timing and counterpunching. Okay. Offensive creativity, and he mixes body shots with head shots. Okay. That's pretty much Terrence Crawford. He was very versatile, but at the same time, at the ring IQ, we're gonna go with some other fight versatility with somebody else in a second, because we have him down as far as overall fight versatility, and you illustrated that as well. Having the ability to see a fight, be 3 steps ahead of their opponents, and being versatile enough to essentially take whatever the opponent's giving them and basically counteract that. I remember hearing somewhere when a fight analyst or something one day said, basically what you want to do as a fighter is basically turn your opponent into an assistant of his own butt kicking, right? So Terrence Crawford is somebody who had made that into an art, okay? It made the opponent, whoever he's fighting, into basically helping him in his own demise, and he did that just as him and Floyd Mayweather did that better than pretty much anybody, or as good as anybody in the history of boxing.
Correct. And then for Terrence too, like the old school fighters, he's maniacal. He's nasty.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
He's nasty in terms of he's a person like this is the difference between the Mayweather version of Mayweather and Bud Crawford. Floyd, and a lot of fighters today too, Floyd wants to beat his opponent.
Right.
He wants to win. He wants to win the bout.
Right.
So however that means, like tactically out pointing you and all of that, he's perfectly content with that, right? And nothing goes wrong with that. Whereas Bud, he wants to beat his opponent. There's a difference.
Yes, there is.
Not only does he want to win the bout,
but he wants to demoralize the person that he's fighting against and actually literally beat him.
He wants you, when you get through with that, or you in the midst of that whooping, how you ever think you were gonna come in here and whoop me? Like that, right. That's his mentality. Like I still remember, and you may have saw my Facebook post. You remember when the Canelo Alvarez fight was announced. Now Bud had beaten Errol Spence to become undisputed for the second time, because he was undisputed at 140 junior welterweight. He had whooped, and that's a fight too. Everybody like Errol Spence. Bud gonna whoop this dude so easy, man. I'm telling you, remember? I'm like, man, Bud gonna whoop this dude. This gonna be y'all gonna be shocked by how easy Bud whoops this dude. I'm telling you. So after that, Bud fought one fight at 154, beat Sergey Madrimov, very good fighter for the belt at WBA championship at 154. But then Canelo came a-calling, who was the undisputed champion at 168 pounds, right? It is literally unheard of for a guy to jump 3 weight classes, essentially, because he basically had one fight at 154. So pretty much he still was a 47 pounder. It's unheard of for a guy to jump 3 weight classes and take on a guy, not only take on a guy, but take on a guy with no tune-up fight at the weight. It's unheard of. Everybody was like, well, Canelo, he's cashing himself out. He just wants the money, and he just did. I'm like, man, Bud gonna whoop this dude. I'm telling you. I knew it. I said, Bud is going to whoop this dude. He gets there. He trains perfectly. He's still just as fast, just as quick. He outboxes Canelo, the great Canelo Alvarez, by the way. And, I'm like, if Bud want to, Bud can stop this dude if he want to. But he came out in that 9th round to stop him. Then Canelo intentionally headbutted him, to kind of break the action and all of that. So I think his trainer, Brian McIntyre, we call him Bo Mac, he never took the leash off of Terrence, because he's like, you're beating him easy. All you got to do is box. But Bud wanted to stop the dude. If he'd have took the leash off of him, I think Bud would have stopped Canelo, even though it's unheard of, unfathomable, because Canelo has never been, he got rocked in that 12th round, but he's never been stopped, let alone really visibly hurt before that fight.
So we got fight versatility coming up next. You have Terrence Crawford for fight versatility, but we also got somebody we talked about in the past. And we talked about none other than the hands of stone himself, Roberto Durán. 103-16 record with 70 knockouts, undisputed lightweight champion during the 1970s, beat Sugar Ray Leonard in their first fight to win the WBC title, upset Iran Barkley to win the WBC middleweight title in 1989. I remember that fight. At the age of 37. Okay. His attributes: aggressive pressure fighter, counter puncher, technical boxing skills, and his adaptation with age. Okay. He relied on timing, defense, and experience rather than pressure and power later on in his career. We talked about Roberto Durán when we did our Four Kings episode. If you haven't had a chance, please go check that one out. We did that one about a year ago. That's another really good episode, if I may say so. One of my personal favorites. Talk about Roberto Durán, and his fight versatility, and the reason why you chose him is for this attribute in our construction of a perfect boxer.
Well, Roberto Durán, Mr. Skills pay the bills.
Yeah.
Basically, as you could say, he's widely regarded as the greatest lightweight ever. No question about it. Because, we talked about the Four Kings episode, but by the time the 80s came about in the Four Kings, Roberto Durán was already an all-time greatest lightweight ever, and the first ballot Hall of Famer. Essentially, had he quit in 1980, he'd have been first ballot Hall of Fame already, right? But he has the ability. He's one of three fighters. He's one of three fighters, with the other being Terrence Crawford. I've never seen a guy that can seamlessly blend offense and defense simultaneously.
Okay.
Where it's like guys in the past were very good at that, but especially now, these dudes, they're either all offense or all defense. Like if they're throwing punches, they're not necessarily, you can see them holes where they're not quite being as defensively responsible as they should be. Now, when you throw a punch at somebody, no matter what precautions you take, you're always going to be open to a degree, but these guys, they'll go welling in and it's wide open. You can hit them with one of them granny from Beverly Hillbillies uppercuts, man, if you wanted to. That's how open they are. Whereas in the old school, that used to be, or I'll say like now, if a guy is all defense, they'll simply cover up or move around the ring, and they'll move, either they cover up or they'll and grapple and clinch, which is the thwart offense, but they're not looking for those counter punching opportunities. Or if they use their feet, i.e. like a Shakur Stevenson, he's a current fighter. He'll move, and even though he has very good footwork, he has a tendency to move so far, he's out of range, he can't possibly come back with anything. Whereas Roberto Durán, he had the ability to seamlessly, he and Terrence Crawford, along with another guy that we're going to mention later, they had the ability to seamlessly blend that. Whereas he could be throwing, he could be throwing a combination. You throw a punch at him, he'll slip that head in there, bang you to the body. He's doing it all at one time. You know what I mean? And Roberto, hands of stone, knockout artist in the 70s, getting them lightweights up out of there, man. He was getting them out of there like clockwork. He was just, he was getting them out of there. But then as he ascended up in weight in the 80s, obviously he's fighting naturally much bigger men. So it's not, even though he can still punch hard, it's not going to be quite as easy. And then, with age, he can box. If you need him to box, he can box his way to a win. I think the most perfect example of him fighting, of a guy fighting perfectly with a seamless blend. They're offensively aggressive, but defensively responsible at all times. A perfect illustration of that is that first Sugar Ray Leonard fight in Montreal. It was like he was on fire that night, and he was just so aggressive. He was, at times, he was fighting so intensely that even though Sugar Ray intended to come in and box, between that and his pre-fight barbs, he just forced Sugar Ray into a shootout. He forced them to fight, kind of abandon a favorable and beneficial game plan to fight Duran's fight. And then you'll see things like, even like he moved up, he got knocked out by Tommy Hearns, and he had the No Mas fight in the second Leonard fight. Before that, everybody thought Roberto was done. Goes fight Marvin Hagler, right? 15-round masterpiece of boxing. He comes up just short. If you want to see high class boxing by two guys, he comes up just short, like split decision, 15 rounds, and then that's where he was the guy, and I think I mentioned this last year. Soon as when he lost to Hagler, he called Sugar Ray Leonard up, and Sugar Ray like, man, what in the world is Roberto Durán calling me for?
Yeah.
With their history, he like, bro, you could beat this dude. You can beat him.
Yeah.
Because he like, and then as illustrated, when he went all the way up to super middleweight, it looked ridiculous. Like, now, Durán is a natural 5'7", 135 pounder. He fighting Duran Barkley, who's about 6'8". Like I talk about that walk around weight.
Right.
That guy is probably close to 200 pounds when he's not fighting. That guy. He was so much bigger than Roberto Durán until it was not funny. But Mr. Skills pay the bills. He can nullify all of the physical disadvantages, all the physical advantages that he has. Like you notice every time Barkley get close, he'll touch that body and roll right out of there. He couldn't trap him against the ropes. Or, they're masters at doing what they need to do. He and Terrence. Like if you get tired and you want to box, here they come bringing the pressure. Yeah. Or if you want to bang and be a little aggressive a little bit, they're gonna box a little bit and create counter punching opportunities. Like I said, always 2 steps ahead. That's true for both he and Terrence.
Okay, now we're moving on to defense to round out the fight adaptability. I guess you could say these are kind of like traits down the line that all goes into fight adaptability. We have ring IQ, we have mental quickness, fight versatility, and now we got defense. Okay. Everybody knows about Floyd Mayweather's defense. That is something that basically goes unsaid. Floyd Mayweather is one of the greatest defensive boxers of all time. But another person that you have down here is it's a little bit of a surprise to me because he's one of my personal favorites. Okay. And that's Pernell Whitaker, Sweet Pea. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time. 44-1 all-time record. Style, he's a southpaw, counterpuncher, 1984 gold medalist, 4-time, 4-division world champion, 15 successful world title defenses, Ring Magazine fighter of 1989. And when they talk about his defense overall, he has elite reflexes, masterful footwork, and outstanding timing and anticipation. Pernell Whitaker, one of my favorite boxers of all time. Talk about my boy.
Man, first thing, before I go to Pernell, one very brief thing about Floyd. Floyd is just so good defensively that he and Pernell were both masters of what we call swimming without getting wet. They were both masters of that. They could stand in the line of fire right there and it just make you miss all night. And then Floyd, just want to touch on Floyd because this misconception that Floyd is all shoulder roll, which the shoulder roll is a huge element of what he does. And he's the master. He's the master at it. I've only seen one other guy that's better at it than he is. And we're going to talk about, quick tease, we're going to talk about that brother a little later. You understand? Okay. But he's very good. He has absolutely the best pull counter I've ever seen. Where a pull count is where you sit down just on the outside and you try to induce your opponent to fight a jab, and then you immediately pull back and counter right over the top of the jab with the right hand. He's the absolute master at that. I know I'm teaching today, but I know I'm teaching today.
You're teaching and you're preaching, baby.
He's the absolute master at that. But then Floyd was also very good at carrying shots, which is really a lost art today. That's if you look at that, that's more of an old school thing. Like where you parry the shots with your hands, picking them off, catching shots, catching punches, and all that. So between Floyd's footwork, his anticipation, his instincts, his shoulder roll where he can block shots, his ability to his ability to parry shots, and his ability to punch in between shots, he's just a defensive mark. Just absolutely. So hence why I got him. Okay. Sweet Pea, though he's just as good in defense, in a lot of ways, obviously there are some similarities because he used some of the similar tactics in terms of slipping and evading punches and things like that. And like I was saying earlier, like how these new school fighters, most notably Shakur Stevenson, they'll use their footwork to make you miss. But as my man Antonio Tarver would say, you got to make a mother sucker miss and make a mother sucker pay.
Yeah.
See, the pay part, that's the part we need is making a miss, great.
Is one
But we
thing.
need the pay. You got to make him pay. And this
Right.
is where the old school, this is where Pernell Whitaker excels because, obviously he pair punches. He can roll in the pocket.
Right.
But you throw a shot at Pernell, he'll just make you barely miss him. Sometimes you would just miss him. He's right there. You would just miss him by less than an inch. But then you're open. Since you missed him by just an inch, he's still in position to counterpunch you and take care of that and take advantage of that opening and his opponent's over aggressiveness. But he had tremendous footwork, tremendous reflexes. And he was very unorthodox because like a lot of times he'll have his hands down. I see him skip missing shot, making him miss. I've seen with Cesar Chavez Senior got frustrated with. He'll throw a punch at Pernell. He could dip so low.
Right.
He would dip so low, almost where his butt is touching the ground to make him miss, and then just pop right back up with that uppercut.
Yeah.
You came in here, but take that with you, son. Take that with you. You understand? And he was just very good. And he was another guy that really blended offense and defense very well. Solid collar, not a huge power puncher, but a lot of times all you have to be able to do is hit hard enough where to kind of deter your opponent from just rushing in and pressuring you with total impunity, and his fights with Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., which he won, it was ludicrous to call that a draw, but it was in San Antonio, Texas. So it was ludicrous. I mean, he just undressed Cesar Chavez that night, and he was what we call he was dressed down in defense that night. He was dressed down in defense from head to toe. He was dressed down in defense. I mean, he had the top hat and the Stacey Adams on, just dressed down in defense, man. You understand? And I mean, he was just making a miss. He was just turning them. He had him spin. He was turning them. He had Cesar Chavez Sr. spinning like a top that night, man. Just peppering them and all that they gave him. And then even then, you go up. He eventually went up to welterweight where those guys were too big, but he gave both Felix Trinidad and they prime. He was kind of past his, as well as Oscar De La Hoya, just total fits. And just 1984 team gold medalist. Who they had? 1984, Evander Holyfield, Meldrick Taylor was on that team. Tyrell Biggs was on that team. They had all kind of what's the other boy? He used to be in all the rap videos back in the days. Mark Breland. Mark Breland was on that team. They just had a lot of guys. So a very, very good fighter. Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, just one of the best defensive fighters I've ever seen.
Okay, now since we talked offense, since we talked defense, it's time to go offense. Okay, in the next few categories, we're going to be talking about offense. Okay, first category of offense that we're going to be talking about is hand speed. Okay, overall hand speed. Roy Jones and Sugar Ray Leonard, obviously. Roy Jones, 66-10 and with 47 knockouts, won the silver medal at the 1988 Seoul Olympics. First former middleweight champ to win heavyweight title by beating John Ruiz in 2003. 4 titles in 4 different weight classes. Fighter of the decade of the 1990s. Boxing Writers Association of America. And when we're talking about Roy Jones's hand speed, explosive lead hooks, rapid combinations, counterpunching speed, unorthodox timing, and he throws punches while moving away or with his hands down. Okay, which is a great example of how powerful and how fast his hands were. If you're going away from an opponent, okay, and he's popping you with a jab and just popping you, you have to have extreme hand speed to do that.
Yes, sir, you do, man. And my main man, Roy Jones, man. and just caveat before I kind of delve into him. One of the best ring walks of all time.
There you go.
He had he was in when he was.
And I'm surprised you didn't put him up there as far as like marketability and charisma, because he had charisma too.
Oh, he had it all. He had, like I mentioned, like a lot of these guys. Like you think about it, okay, Roy Jones, best left hook. I don't have him there, but he could be there.
Yeah.
best athlete, he could be there. Marketability, like most of these guys, if you wanted to, you could put them in at least 80% of these categories, and I'm being conservative. Some of them you can put them in 100% every category, and it would be a reasonable. It would be a reasonable conclusion.
Exactly, right.
It would be reasonable. But he had one of the best ring walks of all time, the Rockweiler entrance in Atlantic City with Redman and
that's when boxing was cool, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's when it was like really, really cool.
Then of course he was on HBO.
Yeah.
Hayden Larry Merchant.
Yeah.
He had some guys called Redman and Method Man. This is like 1999. Who in the world didn't know who Redman and Method Man was in 1999? Who? who besides that old geezer? You know,
right?
Like, you know, and I still remember when Floyd made him mad. If I was 50 years younger, I would kick your door. Don't do nothing. Like, go sit down somewhere. Go sit down before you get drubbed out here. You know,
right.
And then normally you let them old men have it, but not that. Man, go sit down. I'll whoop you there
right.
too. But anyway, man, Roy Jones, just one of the most electric fighters I've ever seen in terms of explosiveness, in terms of athleticism, in terms of his hand speed, just insane hand speed. And he was so talented, like you mentioned, sometimes he would do a lot of things unorthodox.
Right.
But sometimes I always feel, even though it befell him once his reflexes diminished, like his lack of fundamentals, but I think it really enhanced him. Because like a lot of times you have a guy who can do a lot of unusual things. Sometimes doing it by the book can kind of inhibit and limit them sometimes. Guys, I've seen Roy, he would consistently lead with left hooks instead of a jab because he had so much hand speed and foot speed. The natural arc of a left hook will take you out of the way of the punch, especially if a guy is much slower and plotting. And and I've seen him, man, very few people could shoe shine faster than him. You know, when you shoe shine, you throw a whole bunch of it don't really have a lot of pop on it, but it's kind of like the showmanship. You being a showman, you know, understand? And he was just, you know, obviously he got robbed in the '88 Seoul Olympics, and they really had a nice thing just earlier this year. I think he went to his gym, and standing in the gym, I forget the young man's name, but the Korean guy who quote unquote won the gold medal. He was standing in the middle of the ring when he got there to give it to Roy Jones. He said, "Man, you truly earned this, man.
Right.
I've been waiting 30 plus years to give this to you because you're the rightful owner of it." But then, you know, Roy graciously declined. But I think that was just I just love how boxing, even though you could be adversaries and opponents, it's still a brotherhood at heart. It's a gentleman's sport at heart. But anyway, he just perplexed people with his tremendous hand speed. Look at this list. I mean, he fought Bernard Hopkins. He had an injured right hand going into the fight. He was just so fast, beat him with one hand. He made James Toney look like, unbelievably, one of my favorite fighters. He made James Toney look like an amateur, man. I mean, guys like Montel Griffin, Otis Grant, Virgil Hill. He stopped Virgil Hill to win the lightweight title. He stopped him with a body shot. He broke his rib because Otis, you know, he like, man, this dude never throws body shots. He dropped the right hand to the body, right behind the tailbone, bang, broke his rib. He just tremendous Jorge Castro, you know, guy. And then one of my favorite whippings of all time. If you want to see masterclass big mismatches, number one on the list is Floyd Mayweather versus Arturo Gatti. Boy, that was a whooping there. Number two on the list, Roy Jones versus Vinny Pazienza, man. He whooped Po Vinny, man. He whooped Po Vinny, man. He whooped Po Vinny from pillar to post. But yeah, just tremendous hand speed. And he's one of the only guys that have recorded multiple CompuBox rounds of the opponent not landing a single punch on him. Because you remember how HBO used to do the CompuBox, like how many punches each fighter land. He's done it on multiple occasions where the fighter didn't land a single punch on him.
Okay. Then we have, as far as hand speed is concerned, the other guy that you have down is Sugar Ray Leonard. 36 3-1, 25 knockouts, world titles in 5 different divisions, Olympic gold medalist in 1976, Fight of the Year in 1979 and in 1981. One of the 4 kings in boxing. We talked about that in our episode last year. Greatest hand speed in boxing history. 5 rapid combinations. He could change rhythm, land before opponents could react to him. So Sugar Ray Leonard was one of the first fighters that I actually followed as a kid. During that time, 1979, 80, 81, that's when I first kind of got into boxing. And he was like one of the headline guys, and his forte, of course, was his hand speed. Okay. And, and his hand speed, a lot like Roy Jones, has been legendary.
Yes, just tremendous hand speed. But unlike a lot of fighters, he could throw rapid combinations with murderous intent on every shot of said combination.
Right.
Like I mentioned just before, a lot of times guys shoe shine.
Yeah.
It's more of a showmanship. It's more of a showmanship type of things. Whereas like Sugar Ray Leonard, he would have some mean smoke and mustard, and he was a master with his hand speed. Then he'll change the rhythm, like pop, 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 pop.
Yeah.
Pop. And then it's just pretty much akin to a Major League Baseball pitcher changing speeds.
Yeah.
Like a guy that has that big fastball, but then he has that 12-6 curveball or changeup that falls off the table. Man, they changing speeds, and you're throwing that hard and that fast. It's hard to get a dial nor a read on him all night. And in boxing terms, that's how Sugar Ray Leonard was.
Wow.
He just very fast, tremendous hand speed. He do the shovel, the shuffle, and you remember, Howard Cosell, look at the darling doing, he shoved it, and, he just calling it just right, man, and just, and then I still remember, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie called The Fighter, about this fighter that fought in the late 90s and 2000s named Mickey Ward. It's called The Fighter. It had Mark Wahlberg and
I think I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
And Christian Bale was his brother, Dickie.
That's right. Yeah,
Ekman,
that's right. Yeah, I did. I remember that. Yeah. I
Sugar
never
Ray
saw it,
Leonard
but I know what
once.
you're talking about.
He fought Sugar Ray Leonard once. He always throughout the movie, he always brags about, I knocked Sugar Ray Leonard down once, and I did this. Okay, cool. You knocked him down. What happened when Sugar got up, son? Tell it all. If you're gonna tell some of it, tell it all, son. Tell me that piece too. I knocked him down once. Oh, okay, cool. Great. What happened when Sugar got up? That's what I want to know. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, great movie, and just tremendous fighter, and he carried his speed all the way up despite inactivity. I still remember the Donnie Lalonde fight when he fought for both the super middleweight, which is 168 pounds, and light heavyweight, which is 175. And Donnie, I'm sorry, was a huge kid, and he dropped Sugar Ray early in the fight. Sugar Ray, I'm not trying to make a joke of it, but at this time it was well chronicled that that Sugar was kind of embracing that booger sugar a little too much at that time. You understand? So with his stardom, and he dropped Sugar Ray, but then I was like worried because he was so much bigger than him. Because Sugar started out as a lightweight as well, and this is all the way up at 168, 175. He put these rapid. He hurt Lalonde and got him pinned against the ropes, and before the ref could step in, he unleashed a 3-punch combination that concluded with a left hook, and he was on the ground out cold. So he had blistering hand speed, and more importantly, he knew expertly how to use it.
Okay, so we got hand speed. We just talked about Roy Jones Jr. and Sugar Ray Leonard. Now moving on to the jab. Okay, one of the most basic, offensive weapons in boxing, but it also could be, if used correctly, could be a devastating weapon. And these two guys that you have you got these guys that were just known for their jab as far as their insane reach. Okay, we have Larry Holmes and the Hitman Thomas Hearns.
Yes,
as
sir.
the best jabs in the history of boxing. Larry Holmes, 69-6 overall with 44 knockouts. He's 6'3", heavyweight champ in 1978, defended the title 20 times in the early 1980s, and according to boxers and people that are in the know, possessed the greatest left jab in boxing history. Quickness of a light heavyweight, he had power, accuracy, he was versatile, and his signature use of it, he doubled and triple jab before dropping the right hand. So that was the signature punch, the signature combination for one Larry Holmes.
Yes, he's the best in the business at it. But as I've mentioned, and it's a recurring theme once again, people that we've talked about or are going to talk about could be in this category. You know, for example, we mentioned earlier, Sonny Liston could have the best jab.
Yes.
And another gentleman that we're going to talk about very soon, he could be on here as well. But anyway, on the Larry Holmes, he just had a whipping type of jab, and he has one of those jabs where, you know, it's a setup punch where he's supposed to set up and create openings for other punches, which it obviously did, right?
Yeah.
But his jab was just so potent that I've seen him win fights single-handedly with just his jab, single-handedly. Right. And he used to throw it. It was a very unconventional way where he used to throw it, right? He used to throw it with force. But, you know, like a lot of fighters, if you put a piston on the jab, they use jab. I'm just trying to give you an overall view, kind of educate some people. Some people use the jab as a setup punch. Other people, they use it to kind of punish a guy. Sometimes you can throw a jab too hard because it hits the guy so hard, you may knock him out of range for you to follow up with anything, right?
Yeah.
Or you have other people like Lennox Lewis. He had a great jab too, but what he also had was what you call a great probing jab, right?
Yeah.
You know, he'll throw this jab. He's trying to land it, but really
he's
that's
just
secondary.
measuring it. You know, he's measuring it.
No, it's secondary. What he's trying to, his primary purpose of the probing jab is he throw it at your head. Okay, every time I throw it, he dips down to the left to his left hand side, my right hand side. So one of these times he's going to feint that jab, and before that guy can even blink, he's going to have that right hand right where their head's supposed to be. Bang, fight over. That's what he got Tyson with. He ran him dead into an uppercut, even though Tyson was a shell of himself. Still nonetheless. But anyway, Holmes, he used to throw it from underneath, but with an open hand. He didn't throw it with a closed hand. He used to whip it almost. You remember, like, when we were in sports, you'd be in the locker room, we get out the shower, you had that towel, you roll it up, and then you kind of snap it. And the end of that, especially when it's wet, that thing sting if you get caught with it. That's how he threw his jab, like a whipping, like really quick and just
open hand with the open hand, and
he would close his hand it would be open the entire way, but he masterfully knew how to. He could time it right upon impact with his opponent. Right when it's about to hit him, he would close his hand. Boom. You know, and then most importantly, he would snap it back just as fast as he snapped it out. Because you snap it out quick, but you drag it, bringing it back in, you get counterpunched and out. So you have to bring your hand back in position just as quickly for defensive purposes. But anyway, he had a great jab, man. He whooped the likes of Ernie Shavers, Mike Weaver, Gentleman Jerry Cooney, Tim Witherspoon, Carl the Truth Williams. My dad used to call him Carl the Lie Williams. Marvis Frazier, who I mentioned before. I met him on my way to work in DC on the Metro like 15 years ago. But that's he beat a 38-year-old Ali, and then he learned a lot because he was Ali's chief sparring partner throughout the 70s. And then you learning under the tutelage of not only Muhammad Ali but the legendary trainer Angelo Dundee. You understand? Who was also Sugar Ray Leonard's trainer. But then also showing how potent the jab is, right? When he got too old, he retired. He came back. He got knocked out by Tyson. he came back like in the late 80s and throughout the 90s. He went on to fight several more years, winning a lot of notable matches. He beat Ray Mercer, who was like a I want to say I know he was definitely on the either 84 or the 88 Olympic team. He went 12 in a valiant effort against Evander Holyfield when Evander Holyfield was champion, and he fought the likes of he beat Shannon Briggs, Shannon the Cannon Briggs. Let's go, champ. And so a jab. I'm just illustrating that to show you that a jab can take you a very long way.
Right.
And, transition to Tommy.
Yeah, and Thomas Hearns, same thing. 61-5 overall. First fighter to win titles in 5 different weight classes. 78-inch reach, laser-like accuracy. He also had a power jab, versatility, and his jab was a fight-changing weapon. That's what I have down here as far as like his overall snapshot as a fighter and how well he used the jab.
Potent jab, man. Fast, long. He was 6'1" with about is either 78 or 80-inch reach, which is equivalent to heavyweights, basically.
Yeah.
But a guy is 147 pounds with a heavyweight reach and a booming cannon of a right hand as well. Yeah. So he's primarily known as the Hitman, or as Martin would say, the Get Hitman. But I know my favorite moniker of him was the Motor City Cobra. That was a cool nickname. Yeah, because he had a potent jab, and once again, under the tutelage of the famous Crunk Gym out of Detroit, headed by the legendary late trainer Emanuel Stewart, who is a master at teaching a tall guy how to fight tall. He's just an absolute master at that.
Right. I was just wondering about that because I mean, like a lot of boxers you don't see as tall and angular as Thomas Frazier, like Tommy Frazier, like Thomas Hearns was. Thomas Hearns was. You don't see that too often. Okay, especially with the success that he had as a boxer and with that type of height and build, because he was kind of a skinny-er kind of guy, but he had this long angular reach that just kept people, just kept opponents just right at bay, and they were just stinging with a quick jab that he had, and it was so accurate, and it was just like lightning quick, and that was his signature. You saw it throughout his career, you saw it briefly in that fight between him and Marvin Hagler, which is one of the great 3-round fights you'll ever see. And then we talked about that extensively in our last episode when we talked about the Four Kings. But, Thomas Hearns was one of the really great, solid jab artists, maybe one of the greatest jab artists of all time.
Yes, sir. And it carried him to far heights, man, because he could really change the timing of that jab, but he would double it, he would triple it. Then he had a real nasty left hook to the body off of it. Right. Like if you like sometimes he'll feint that jab or he'll jab and then he'll drop that left hook to the body off that jab while he spin you out, man. And he was really good at that. And he had a spectacular jab where, as I told you in the episode last year, right? He's fought several the best of the best in terms of boxers, right?
Right.
But because of his jab and his acumen and his ability to expertly fight tall due to the tutelage of Emanuel Stewart, I've never seen Tommy outboxed. Never. Right. Every time Tommy loses, you have to just basically make roughhouse, pressure him, swarm him. Because somebody his size, that's his kryptonite. Because every time, because you remember we talked about it briefly last year. You remember going into the Leonard Hearns fight that we talked about last year, 1981. Right. The conventional wisdom going into the fight was that Leonard would have to box, use his footwork, his boxing ability, and to avoid Hearns' cannon right hand, and Hearns would have to try to set him up for that right hand. But then Tommy was outboxing him with that jab, swelling his eye. Then you remember I mentioned it last year. what's his name? Dundee. You're blowing it, son. You're
blowing it. Yeah.
Then Sugar Ray, he hurt Tommy around the 7th round, and then spectacularly, the roles of the fight changed. Sugar Ray became the swarmer, the pressure guy, the guy looking for the knockout, whereas Tommy assumed Leonard's prior role. He was boxing beautifully, using angles, using the jab, and all of that, and a great fight. And then you mentioned Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler just immediately came out and made it about war from the very beginning. He's like, this is not going to the cards, because they had such vitriol from the fight buildup. By that time, they were like, this isn't going to the cards. Somebody is getting knocked out tonight. So he went for broke, and it's an all-time gamble that paid off immensely. But even with Tommy, similar to Larry Holmes, he was able to ascend all the way up to 175 pounds and win the light heavyweight title from Virgil Hill at that time, because of that jab and that ability to box. Because a lot of times when you can box and you got the skills to pay the bills, as I like to say, or many like to say, that saying is an exclusive. You
don't have to copyright on that. Huh?
You know what I mean? So, but a lot of times your skills can take you to places beyond your body makeup, even though his frame was perfectly suited to add weight and go up, but still, he was able to start out at welterweight and then wind up all the way up. I think when he finished, he was all the way up at cruiserweight. So one of the best jobs of all time. Thomas the Hitman Hearns, aka the Motor City Cobra.
Motor City Cobra. So next we have left hook, and we got Joe. You have down here. We have Joe Frazier and Sugar Ray Robinson. We're going back a little bit with this one. We're going back a few years. Joe Frazier, Olympic gold medalist in 1964, overall 32-4-1 with 27 knockouts, world heavyweight champion from 1970 through 1973. Beat Muhammad Ali to defend his title in 1971 in the fight of the century at Madison Square Garden. Frazier's left hook, explosive power, short and compact, relentless setup, and as we saw a few times in his career, fight-ending weapon, 15-round knockout versus Ali, 15-round knockdown in 1971, knocked Ali down, and Frazier won by unanimous decision after the knockdown in the 71 fight. But that left hand that he had that left hook was just devastating, to say the least.
Yes, sir. One of the most potent left hooks, and he devised that left hook because he started out as a sharecropper in South Carolina, and all of that. And ironically, he had severely injured his left arm running from, I want to say a dog was chasing him or something like that. He severely injured his left arm, but then it's just something that he worked on. And I just honestly think that sometimes more than any sport, boxing are God-given abilities.
Yeah.
No explanation. Like for instance, like Tommy Hearns' right hand, that's just God-given. You can train up some of that, but a lot of those attributes, you either have them or you don't. And Joe Frazier's left hook falls into that category, right? He did that, and then as you mentioned, he won the gold medal as well in the 1964 Olympics. In 74 Olympic Games, and then he kind of became champion. He kind of became champion during Ali's exile. So he kind of had a little paper champion status to him by some, because he didn't win it from Ali, but then he kind of put that to bed with the aforementioned rocket of a left hook in the 15th round that knocked Ali down and broke Ali's jaw. And then he just had had 2 fights with George Foreman. Sometimes styles make fights, and George Foreman is just all wrong for Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier's style is just tailor-made for George. It's just because George threw all these hard shots, crude shots from underneath, these half hook, half uppercuts, and the way Joe moves his head right there in the pocket. I mean, George couldn't miss him if he tried. So it's perfectly tailor-made, because his style is made to kind of, you're a taller fighter like Ali trying to jab. He's slipping he's slipping and
Right.
bobbing and weaving underneath the shots. Whereas George is kind of bringing them from underneath to begin with. So it's just like, woo, so he, Joe beat the likes of like Jimmy Ellis. He one of the all-time great light heavyweights that moved up to heavyweight. Beat Bob Foster, fight of the century, a true fight of the century. Meeting of the big time superpower summit in Muhammad Ali in 71, and he just several just great left hooks, great trilogy with Muhammad Ali, culminating with
the Thriller in Manila
in the Philippines, and they both have said, especially Ali, that that's the closest he ever came to feeling like he was dying and all of that. And then Ali also said that even though they are have a lot of differences and all of that, if he had ever had a war to fight, he would want Joe Frazier. He'd be the first person he asked to fight by his side. So
that's cool.
Kudos.
Sugar Ray Robinson is the other person that you had down, what many people consider the greatest pound-for-pound boxer in boxing history. 174, 19-6 with 109 knockouts. Welterweight champion, 5-time middleweight champion. One of the best ever left hooks of all time with explosive power, versatility, speed, accuracy, and finishing ability. 1957, fifth-round KO of Gene Fullmer, which is probably the most famous left hook in middleweight history. That's very, when you talk about Sugar Ray Robinson, a lot of people, especially recently, it's one of those things where if you hadn't fought prior to like 1990, you kind of get forgotten about. And Sugar Ray Robinson kind of falls into that because a lot of people don't realize how great of a fighter he was. Now, we're going to talk about, his left hook, but at the same time, pound for pound, considered one of the greatest pound for pound boxers of all time. That's saying a lot. That's really saying a lot about him.
Now, literally, this is the guy that literally, if I wanted to, his name could be in every category on this list. Literally, this is the guy.
Right.
Best right hand, best hand speed, best this, best that. He literally all the way down, it could be him.
Really? Okay.
That's how good he was. He is without a doubt the greatest fighter that ever lived. No question about it. No question about it. And I call him he's the prototype, right?
Okay.
Because you look at all of these old films of him, he uses all these old school tricks, but the way he moves, the way he does things, he looks like an 80s fighter. An 80s or a 90s fighter, the way he moves and like the fluidity and the smoothness that and the grace that he moves with and the power, the right hand. He had the pretty boy looks. I just call him the original prototype. And then he's ranked the GOAT by the late great Bert Sugar. Even if you don't follow boxing, you know who Bert Sugar is.
Yes, of course.
Champion in 4 weight divisions, 135, 140, 160, and 175. And he's the originator of the modern sports entourage. So he was the first one that was walking around with hang-ons. I don't know if that's good or bad. To me, I don't like a whole lot of people around me that don't provide no tangible contribution. But he just had a tremendous left hook and all of that. He just, his fights with Jake LaMotta, Jake LaMotta knocked him out. Then he came back 3 weeks later and beat Jake LaMotta. He won 2 out of 3, his great fights with Jacob LaMotta and all of that. And then, he's just fighting all kind of, great fighters. Because these were the days where, man, you might fight every 3 to 6 weeks in these days.
That's something that I've always was fascinated by. But when you talk about boxers and fighters from the 1950s, is that they would fight like once a month. They would fight like once every couple of months. And not because it was a money thing or anything like that. It was just fun. to them. It's just something that they just did, and we're gonna talk about another boxer that was in that same time frame in a couple minutes, but Sugar Ray Robinson, like a lot of those fighters in the 1950s, you have a boxer now with fight maybe on average, twice a year, maybe?
Man, it's like once every 18 months now. It used to be 3 times a year. It went down like during Floyd and Manny's time, 2 times a year. But like now, man, a lot of these guys, they fight every year and a half because, the money is dried up in boxing a lot because there's all the networks have dropped it. And like a lot of these guys now, the problem is they want Money Mayweather payout and clout, but they don't want to put in no pretty boy Floyd work.
That's a great,
you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So see, everybody might talk about Money Mayweather, but he paid his dues and he put in work first.
Right.
Then on the back end, he started going fighting for the money. He was already certified Hall of Famer before he ever changed his moniker. These guys now, man, they just want maximum payout. They want to make $5 million fighting Joe Blow, fighting a tomato can without a post. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, you can't draw any money. I'm not paying you $5 million to do that. But anyway, on to Sugar Ray Robinson. He used to fight every time, and then an unfortunate incident with him. He was set to fight a guy named Jimmy Doyle, and he had a dream that he was going to kill him, right?
Right.
So as a result, he didn't want to fight, but then obviously between the promotion and all the money that was put into the fight, he was convinced to go through with the fight. And then surely enough, he hit him with a left hook in the 8th round and knocked him unconscious. Jimmy Doyle unconscious, and he died. Jimmy Doyle died that night, and that's just something that he never really got over. He had so much contrition, that he gave Jimmy Doyle's mother the bouts, the money from his next 4 bouts, so she could purchase a home for herself, which was her son's intention for why he was fighting. Right. That's how contrite that he was, and all of that, and just the greatest fighter that ever lived. Sugar Ray Robinson, great left hook.
Okay, moving on to the right hand. We already talked about Thomas Hearns, and we talked about his right hand. But another person that you have down as a right hand is a man by the name of Joe Louis.
Yes, sir.
And we're going back some years. Okay, we talked about Thomas Hearns. We can speak on him a little bit, but Joe Louis, 66-3, 52 knockouts, world heavyweight champ from 1937 to 1949. 25 consecutive title defenses, arguably the most technically perfect right hand in heavyweight history. Short and compact, pinpoint accuracy, awesome timing, great setup with the combination, and he has great finishing ability. But but what I have right here, arguably the most technically perfect right hand in heavyweight history. Speak on that phrase, if you don't mind.
Man, it was just, like a lot of people in boxing, like, for example, Mike Tyson, for example, right?
Right.
He has a lot of power, right? But when you watch him throw it, it looks like he's swinging hard.
Right.
Like he's swinging hard. He's that we call that loading up on the shot. Sometimes they load up on the shot, so it's telegraphed. You can slip it, you can dodge it, or whatever, and all of that. Whereas Joe Louis, man, that thing come off a mountaintop, man. It's just like, he'll be working that jab. Now, by the way, he's another guy, right?
Right.
If you wanted to put him his best jab ever, you could. Right. Joe Louis is in the discussion for the best jab of all time. But his right hand, it was just so short, quick, and compact that he didn't load up on it. I mean, he just turned it over he turned it over perfectly, man. And he could just get people out of there, man. Like, you know, I remember like the big fight, the fight of the century at the time when he fought Max Schmeling in 1936, right?
Right.
He had lost to Max Schmeling by knockout about a year and a half before
earlier,
that.
yeah.
And Max Schmeling was, I think, if I remember, he was German. So they fought again in Yankee Stadium in New York. It was the fight of the century, right? And you know, he knocked Max Schmeling out the second time
in the first round.
And he put that to bed because he just had a bazooka right hand that was fast and, more importantly, accurate. Because there's a lot of people that can punch, but they're not sharp punchers. Like they'll hit you like high up on the cheekbone, where it's like, okay, if he was a little bit lower, there would have been a problem. Whereas him, he just had an ability to touch you right on that chin, man. Just boom, and then down you go. And then, you know, with his jab, state-of-the-art jab, sometimes you get so preoccupied with that jab can blind you. And then when he turned that right hand over, short, quick, and compact, you never see it coming, right? And then you look at like, you know, he beat. Listen to these names. He beat Jersey Joe Walcott twice, who's a legend in his own right. Stopped him the second time in the 11th. You know, he retired for a while, and at the age of 36, lost to Izzy Charles. Then he fought at 38 years old. He fought Rocky Marciano. Now, according to a barber that I know in Queens, you know, Joe Louis is 75 years old. Joe Louis 75 years old when he fought Robbie. You know, Joe Louis, he sat right there. He's 75 years old. The next day, man, dude, Frank Sinatra was in there. He said, Joe Louis, 78 years old, man. You know, in other words, he was so washed up. Now, a quick caveat about Joe Louis, right? In the middle of their careers, I just want to bring this up just for the absurdity of it, right? In the middle of his career, of course, he had to go to the Army, right?
Yeah.
When he was on the Army, a white guy approached him and another guy to get off the bench, called them the obvious, right? Get off this bench. You're not supposed to sit here. So Joe Louis vehemently opposed and stood up for himself. And then they all relented. Guess who the other guy was that was on the bench with him?
Who?
Sugar Ray Robinson. You have got to.
You got a death wish if you're gonna do that.
That's how sometimes irrational racism can be. You have got to be out of your freaking mind to even try to press one of those guys, let alone both. You know what I mean? You've got to be out of your freaking mind. But then, to talk to it, he served his country in the middle of his career, and then, he had to come out of retirement due to IRS tax issues and fight Rocky Marciano. And, and the man he was, and the ambassador of goodwill that he was, the fact that he served his country and then has to come back and then kind of basically be destitute and fight well beyond his prime is kind of it's kind of disheartening.
It is. Next up, we have overall punching power. Okay, we talked about George Foreman and his punching power during the 1970s, and we'll touch on that a bit. Okay, but the person that I really want to talk about is, and this was one of my dad's favorite boxers, a man by the name of Ernie Shavers. Okay?
Yes, sir.
The Black Destroyer. 76-14-1. One of the most feared heavyweights. 70 knockouts, 23 of those 70 knockouts in the first round. First round KO'd Ken Norton in 1979. Regarded as the hardest single punch in boxing history. Muhammad Ali said, quote, Ernie hit me so hard, my kinfolk in Africa felt it. Randall Tex Cobb, Ernie Shavers could hit you in your neck with his right hand and break your ankle. Okay. He had exceptional leverage and body rotation and is considered the greatest heavyweight to never win a title. That's a very interesting thing to say. One of the greatest heavyweights to not win a title.
Yeah. And the irony of it is his power cost him the title.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain that in just a moment, right? But just real quick, to just give him some additional kudos. Brother has 70 wins by KO. Just imagine. You knock one person out. Just imagine you getting a brawl with somebody today. You knock one person out, you'll walk around feeling good the rest of the day. Like, boo. Just imagine you knock out 70. Brother had a 76.9 KO percentage. And as you alluded to, he challenged for the heavyweight title twice, lost to Ali by decision in over 15 rounds, and then lost to Larry Holmes in 12. And to your point, he hurt Ali in the second round. But this is where the power cost him, right? In that Larry Holmes fight, he dropped Larry Holmes. And I'm not lying. You watch it. He countered one of Larry Holmes' jab with overhand right. And when he hit Larry Holmes, I'm not lying. You go back and watch. It. It sounded like a gunshot when he hit him. Boom, right? But Larry Holmes says out of his own mouth that it cost him because he hit him so hard, right? When he hit him, he said, I was out. As soon as he contacted with me, I was out. But he hit me so hard that I bounced off the floor hard and it woke me back up. Because he hit him so hard and he landed. He was out. He was completely knocked out. But he crashed on the floor so hard that woke him back up.
Dang.
And all of that. So and then they went on, and he just had legendary power. Then another tidbit that you may or may not know about, or our listeners may or may not know about. Sylvester Stallone, he was looking for casting in Rocky III for a certain role of Clubber Lang, which ultimately would go on to be played by Mr. T. He brought Ernest Shavers in as a possibly for the part.
Right.
So they in there messing around, and Sylvester Stallone always has a penchant for this. He don't know what our grandparents would say. He didn't know. He didn't know when it was, didn't know when the getting was good, man.
Right.
It just, he like, Ernie, hit me hard as you can.
Oh,
and Ernie
man.
Ernie man, no, man, I don't want. He's like, man, no, man, I don't. He like, no, man, come on, hit me harder than Ernie. Like, no, man, I don't want to do that. So he kept on there, like, okay, fine. He hit him in the ribs, broke his ribs, and bruised his heart. And he had to go to the hospital. And then, of course, now he's mad and wouldn't give him the role over that. You insisted.
You insisted on that, right? I mean, come on. I mean, you begged him and begged him and begged him and begged him, right? And then to do that, and then he did it, and then now you mad? He
obliged, and now you're the one upset. He told you from the beginning it's a bad idea, and I don't care how many weights you lift and how much HGH you take, because I'm in the weight room, I lift a lot, but I'll never be crazy enough to ask a professional boxer my size, let alone somebody as big as Ernie Shavers, to hit me hard as he could. No, that's stupid. You know what I mean? So but anyway,
that's
just
crazy.
all time hardest hitter. Now, speak on George Foreman briefly. He's always one punch from victory, which aided him in his comeback in the 90s. He was well past his prime. He didn't have the activity and the work rate that he once had, but he was much slower, but he was much smarter. He had a much higher IQ the second time around. So just think about this. Had you combined the physical abilities of the 70s George with the mental capabilities of the 90s George,
he would have been unstoppable.
We talking about perhaps the greatest fighter ever.
Right.
We're talking about that. But anyway, he valiantly fought Evander Holyfield for the title. Hurt him a few times, but Holyfield was at his apex, so he won a 12-round decision. So he fought Michael Moorer.
Yeah.
And in this fight, George was looking old, George was looking slow, and Michael Moorer was looking winning every second of every round. Right. When George landed and I mean, if you look at it, it looked like he barely swung. He hit him and out he goes. And then the irony of it was he's now the heavyweight champion at age 45. And he had on the same trunks that night that he had when he got KO'd by Ali and Zaire in 1974.
Wow.
He had on the exact same trunks. He had on the exact same trunks that he wore the night he lost to Ali that night. And he that those trunks were a sign of probably one of his most painful moments. And those trunks also played a role in his redemption.
So I had this written down about George Foreman and his overall punching power. It's like something of a scouting report. It said George Foreman didn't just hit hard; he hit with a kind of effortless thudding force that made elite heavyweights crumble. Okay, so it wasn't like what Ernie Schaefer was, just pure power. Okay, Foreman had that power too, but it was like a boom, boom, and it just wore you down. You know, and then he'll hit you like what happened with Michael Moore. It did look like he barely swung, didn't make any contact, but the next thing you know, he's down. And like, what happened? It was all looking like, what happened? And you slow it down, and you're like, oh, that's what happened. But it was so funny. For him, 45 years old, and my dad was like, because my dad was 45 years old at the time. Okay, and we watched the fight, and my dad was like, see what 45-year-olds can do? I'm like, and I was like, 21, 22 when that happened or something like that?
Yes, so, like 1994, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I was 21 years old at the time. So I was like, I see, but we'll see. You're not George Foreman. But anyway.
But the crazy thing about that is, very briefly, was, George said he said in the pre-fight meeting, he told Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant, he said at some point he's gonna feel safe enough to stand right in front of me, and that's when I'm going to do it. And like he mentioned, like I mentioned before, he was losing every second of every round because Michael Moore was a southpaw. He was
younger.
He was a great light heavyweight at 75. Yeah. He was outspeeding him and all of that, right? So George Foreman, right before that knockout punch, he landed a shot. He landed a straight right hand, just as effortless, but it hit him like on the forehead. So he was like, okay, I need to bring it down a little lower.
Right. And
he brought the second one down. He knocked him out. Now, Michael Moore was like, after the one that hit him in the forehead, he said, I don't remember anything after that. I don't remember. So he was already out like a light before the the knockout punch even came. And then a caveat about George Foreman, one more, like we were saying, like the precision of Joe Louis's right hand, right? And all of that. How George Foreman, it didn't matter. He could hit you on the ear. It didn't matter it didn't matter where he hit you at. If he touched you, it was going to hurt. No matter where he touched you at, it was going to hurt, and it was going to hurt bad. It didn't matter where he hit you at.
That was, George Foreman. 90s George Foreman. It was fun watching him box because it was like, his punches looked like it just came from all over the place, and it was like, it looked really slow, but if it connected, you were like, oh, he's going down, if they were to connect. You
remember the walk-off uppercut he hit Jerry Cooney with?
Yes, yeah.
He hurt Jerry Cooney. And when Jerry Cooney got up, what's that boy's name? What's that? Joe Cortez. Yes, that's his name. Can you continue? I'm like, no, he can't continue. George walked up and just threw a equivalent to a drive-by, but it was a walk-by uppercut, left uppercut, boom, and just kept walking past him and out like a light. Jerry Cooney was just out like a light. It was just, he had that freakish power. His power kind of reminded me. I didn't watch the Monsters a lot as a kid, but you remember when Herman would barely touch somebody, and then they fly all the way to atop the telephone pole. He looked like he barely touched them. That's what George Foreman's punches used to remind me of.
Okay, the next trait that we have talking about is fighting grit. Okay, which we've defined as competitive obsession, heart, and composure. And the two fighters that you have here, Muhammad Ali and Evander Holyfield. Now, Muhammad Ali, there's no better example of that than the Thrilla in Manila. Endured punishment, hard willingness to, to keep going through just beyond exhaustion, fighting in the heat and humidity of Manila, the Philippines. 15 rounds. Well, it really went 14. Frazier didn't come out for the 15th. He said at the end of the fight he'd never been so close to death,
Correct.
And his overall just composure and toughness and unbreakable spirit I have written down. And I have written down his indomitability, okay? Unbreakable spirit, refusal to be defeated physically, mentally, or emotionally,
Yes.
And that fight personified that about him, that his competitiveness, and he basically refused to go down. Every other fighter that I could think of that would have been in that situation against Joe Frazier they never would have gone 12, much less 14, almost to 15. Because because Frazier is like the Thrilla in Manila was basically 3 fights in one.
Correct.
Ali dominated in the first opening rounds. Then Frazier started taking over in the middle rounds. And then there was that one incident when Ali knocked the mouthpiece out of Joe Frazier's mouth. That kind of changed the whole tenor of the fight from that point on. You know what I mean? So that was like one of the greatest overall fight of all time, in my opinion. So Muhammad Ali and his overall indomitability is totally personified in that fight. And then we also want to talk about Evander Holyfield in a bit, but let's talk about Ali and why you had him down as, with his overall fighting grit.
Just grit, because to come back from exile and that 3-year exile, which you were smack dab in the middle of your prime, you probably weren't even at your peak yet, and to lose that, and to not only lose that, but then still win the heavyweight title 2 more times, to become the first person to win the heavyweight championship 3 times.
Yeah,
it requires a lot of heart, and I think you mentioned one thing that exemplified his heart. I think another thing, and it involved Joe Frazier as well, right? I was like in the 15th round of that first Frazier fight, when he got knocked down and got his jaw broke and he fell down. He didn't have anything left. He stubbornly got up and stood the corner for the rest of the round and took his whooping. He like, you might whoop me, but I ain't folding. He said, I'm not folding no matter what. He's stubborn, because the way he got up, it was a stubbornness. He knew the fight was lost. He knew he knew the fight was already lost, but he stubbornly got up like, well, you just got to keep whooping on me, because I'm not.
Right. I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction of you knocking me down. No, knocking me out. No, you're not gonna do that.
You're not knocking me out. He was stubborn, and then just imagine the he came out against George Foreman trying to box him and use a lot of movement and things like that, but quickly discovered that George Foreman was expertly cutting the ring off. But just the composure, especially with the consensus around the fight going into it, that many people thought it was suicide. Because I still remember when he was going out the ring walk for the fight, his whole camp were looking dejected and all of that, and he turned around to him and was like, how am I supposed to believe if you guys don't believe? Chill, it's going to be all right. He had to kind of, usually your coach and your entourage, they're there to kind of uplift your spirit and to motivate you.
To pump you up. That's what they're there for.
He had to motivate them to believe. And he went out there, and then you just got to think about the place that his mind had to go in order to endure. Because, he was tiring Foreman out, but Foreman was landing some hard body shots, and I'm sure he was urinating blood for a few weeks after that fight, because he was landing some hard shots. Now, to his benefit, I've never before nor since, and not taking no credit away, I've never before nor since seen no ropes that loose in my life, you know, because he was leaning all the way back to the broadcast booth all the way, almost, man.
Like laying down almost, huh?
Like, good Lord, them ropes loose, man. But but where he had the wherewithal, the heart and the composure that he had to have to keep himself composed and to keep himself mentally in the fight to weather that storm and then turn it around and tire him out. Because, you know, you had to go through a storm in order to tire him out, and he managed to do it and all of that. So shout out to arguably the greatest, Muhammad Ali.
Now, also you have Evander Holyfield. This is the first time we've mentioned Evander tonight with his overall fighting grit. 44-10-2 overall, 29 knockouts, bronze medalist in the 1984 Olympics, 4-time heavyweight champ. Tenacity is the watchword for him. Ability to persevere and compete at the highest level, regardless of the adversity. Okay, willing and fought larger heavyweights. Okay, consistently fought through punishment, i.e., the Riddick Bowe, Mike Tyson fights. Competitive obsession, heart, composure, maintained discipline and focus under pressure, and adjusted tactically and mentally in high pressure title bouts. So he was, when it comes down to grit, I think when you talk about Evander Holyfield, he was the total package. When it came down to just that particular trait of having just the overall willingness to take punishment and rise through all of the adversity that a fighter goes through during the course of a fight.
Okay, this is how crazy he is.
Okay,
he always mentioned that when you're in trouble, as long as you can still feel the punches, even if they still hurt, you're good.
Right.
The moment you can't feel them anymore, you're bad because you're probably going to be knocked out. You're probably close to being knocked out, or you're going to be knocked out. This is how crazy he was. Now, I'm going to touch upon his heavyweight stuff in just a moment. But at cruiserweight, he had 2 wars, the first of which to win the World Cruiserweight title. He had 2 absolute wars with Dwight Muhammad Qawi. You know, just 2 wars. I mean, especially that first fight, 2 of the best fights you will ever see, right? And they went toe to toe. It was just an old phone booth fight. Neither man give an inch, and he prevailed both times. But then even in his heavyweight career, he had because moving up, he was a very undersized heavyweight when he first started because he used to weigh in at approximately 202. He was very, very low. Very, very low. He was very, very small for a heavyweight. And in them days, you know, heavyweights were like, this was before the super heavyweight era. Yeah. So now these guys now be like 6'7", 260. But back then these guys be like 6'3", 6'4", like 230, 235. He's giving up 30, 40 pounds easy, right?
Right.
But you know, he had several instances, like for example, his fight against Burt Cooper. He had gotten hurt. He had gotten hurt and almost out on his feet in one of his heavyweight title defenses. And he was out on his feet in his hometown, and he recuperated and knocked the guy out like a round or 2 later. And then two of the biggest instances of his heart. Now I have to set this up because I think you and I talked about this briefly last week. Now, obviously this is like the late 80s, beginning of the 90s. This is at the apex and the peak of Mike Tyson. So Tyson was the guy, you remember, everybody, you know, gravitated, because people, I know like a lot of people, they forget that at one time, they couldn't believe, I was like, at one time, Mike Tyson was twice as big as Michael Jordan was at one time. Oh, yeah. Like in the late 80s, Michael Jordan was a megastar, but whatever Michael Jordan was, Tyson was times 3, 4, or 5 at the time.
Yeah, I was in high school at the time. I can vouch for that. That was actually
he was 3, 4, and 5 times at the time, because this was still the time where the heavyweight champion of the world in boxing was a notable figure at the time. This was still the time. And then he was like, after the Ali era, you had Holmes, who wasn't quite as destructive as Tyson, nor as charismatic as Ali. So they kind of like, whatever. But then when he came, this guy in the old school with the black shoes, those socks, black shorts with a cutout towel over his head coming to the ring, his persona just made people enamored with him. But anyway, it was a general consensus, that Holyfield was scared of Tyson. He couldn't beat Tyson. Holyfield had signed to fight the winner of Mike Tyson and Buster Douglas in Tokyo. He was in the crowd in Tokyo, Japan that night because he was going to fight the winner and challenge Tyson if he won. Right. Obviously, Buster Douglas won the title, so he had to fight Buster Douglas instead. So he knocked, Buster type of fighter. He was motivated that night for Tyson, obviously asking him to be motivated after getting all the women and the money. That's too much to ask for. So obviously he wasn't in shape, but against Holyfield knocked him out, like I want to say in the third or something. But since he's the heavyweight champion of the world, undisputed now. Yeah. But since he did not win it from Tyson, it was this consensus that he was a paper champion, that he was a fraudulent champion because he didn't win it from Mike, right? So then he signed to fight Mike Tyson, I want to say like in late summer of 1991. Tyson had a rib injury during training, so they had to postpone the fight. But we got to postpone the fight until, Mike got this little trial in November, and we'll fight right after that. It's no big deal. Or whatever. But when you send a tax attorney to a criminal case, do the math. So Mike got convicted and sentenced. So obviously Holyfield didn't get to fight Mike at that time. So he went 12 rounds with an ancient, past his prime Larry Holmes. He went 12 rounds with a 45-year-old George Foreman. You could knock him out. So it was growing things that he was fraudulent and all of that. So he fights Riddick Bowe, a young guy. They're fighting. Riddick Bowe having the night of his life. Then comes round 10. We all still think he's a fraudulent champion. Very early in the 10th round, Riddick Bowe hurts him big time with his uppercut, and he's stumbling all over the ring. And I still remember this was the days when the whole family and the whole neighborhood would come over and watch the fight. All of us were in my living room. Everybody was calling Holyfield a chump except for my dad. So we were sitting there, we told you he was a chump. He's stumbling around, punch drunk and all of that. Mm-hmm. Then in the same round, somehow, some way, he gathers his composure, clears his head, weathers the storm, gets his legs back under him, and he comes after Riddick Bowe with a vengeance. And then by the end of the round, Riddick Bowe is stumbling around. And he fights so hard that at the end of the round, if you watch it when the bell rings, Riddick Bowe taps him in the stomach, like just giving him, like salute, respect, right? Right. Holyfield would go on to lose that fight. But, as we may talk about at some point, a lot of times in life and in this in sport, sometimes when you lose, you win.
You win. Yeah. I was just thinking that, right.
He lost the heavyweight title of the world. He lost the fight, all of that. Mm-hmm. But all of the stardom, all of the respect, all of the adulation that he had been seeking, he got through a loss.
Yeah, now, ironically through a loss, right?
He was never considered a fraudulent champion again. He was never considered to be a punk. He was never considered to have no heart, and he was consistently considered befitting of his moniker. He is in fact the real deal. Holyfield.
There you go.
Then you go. Couple years later, right? He fights Riddick Bowe a couple more times. Then the last time, because you can't go through all of those wars and then it's without no signs of slippage. He fights the third Riddick Bowe fight. Riddick Bowe beats him by stoppage. Yeah. So he's considered washed up, finished, kaput, done. Meanwhile, Tyson has come out of prison now. Right. So he embarked upon his quest and rode back to the title, which he got by beating Bruce Seldon. That's the night Tupac got shot in Las Vegas. That was at the Tyson Bruce Seldon fight when he got shot and he died a few days later. Right. Anyway, Tyson wins that, so they scheduled the fight with Holyfield for that fall. Holyfield was considered a 20-1 underdog. And Holyfield was considered no chance. He was washed up. Mike is going to probably knock him out in 2 to 3 rounds and all of that.
Right.
Fight commences. Holyfield fights the darn fight of his darn life, culminating with stopping Mike in the 12th. You know, he stopped Mike in the 12th to win the title over, to beat Tyson finally. To beat him, and the whole crowd was just going crazy. You know how it is. That's what I love about boxing. You can start out booing a guy, and by the end of the night, the same guy that's being booed, everybody's like, even if he loses, they're like, man, this dude fighting his butt off, though. Even though he's losing, he's fighting his butt off. So they cheer him just for the magnificent effort and the valiance. The valiant effort that he's given. But anyway, then he wins the title. And then, of course, that following July in 97, they have the rematch, which is the night that Mike Tyson bit the ear and all of that. That was the rematch of that fight. So Holyfield, Hart. Sorry for the long story. But
no, that's fine, man. This is great. This is what we're for. Okay. And after fighting grit, we got ring presence and inside fighting. We talked about one of the guys that we have down is Roberto Durán. Okay. But another guy that we hadn't really talked too much about is James Toney. Okay. Mr. Lights Out himself, James Toney, 77-10-3, 47 knockouts. World title as a middleweight, super middleweight, cruiserweight, IBF middleweight champion 1991, beating Michael second to none in the 11th round. He was an old school fighter, relied on timing and defensive mastery, ring intelligence, and his ring presence, what we're talking about here. Calm under pressure, confidence, bordering on intimidation, timing and intimidation, inside fighting, blended defense with offense, reminiscent of fighters from an earlier era. Okay, that pretty much encapsulate James Toney in a nutshell, right?
Correct. Now, you remember when I said earlier,
when
we were talking about fight versatility, how Roberto Durán and Terrence Crawford were two of the guys that I've seen that could seamlessly blend offense and defense the best. There's only one other person that I've ever seen that could do it better than they could.
It's James Toney.
I've never seen a guy that could seamlessly blend offense and defense together, and he's just a master inside fighter, just a old school rolling the shoulder, parry, and catch and shoot. He's the master of the catch and shoot. You throw that hand, you throw that jab, you catch it with the right hand, then simultaneously counter with the right hand. He's the master of the pull counter too. Like I told you with Floyd, he's the master where he induce you to throw that jab. He know his distance, so he'll line up just outside that range, but it looks like he's in range. You throw that jab, he pull back, and then he fire that right hand right down the pipe, right on the chin. The master of that, just a master inside fighter. All of the tricks of the trade. He's the best fighter I've ever seen in terms of fighting off the ropes. Like most people, they fight off the ropes. Don't fight off the ropes. It's a bad thing. James, sometimes the laziest people, sometimes it's good to have a guy that's lazy because they're going to find the easiest way to do something. A lot of times, so he would just get right on those ropes and he could just counter, he could smother. And then the thing that I like about him, because most fighters, especially nowadays, they need a whole lot of room to, like Thomas Hearns, like I told you earlier, like if you swarm him and all of that, he has problems because, he can't get his jab in his right hand off because he's rangy. He needs room in order to be able to do that. Whereas James, on the other hand, you could literally put James inside a phone booth and he's effective as all get out, man. He doesn't need a lot of room. You literally, I've seen James knock guys out. He'd throw a little short hook. He just has 3 inches to work with. He'll slap him with a little hook. Bang, the guy's out. He doesn't need a lot of room. Now, if you want masterclass on how to take apart a pressure fighter, it's 2 examples. You need to watch his super middleweight showdown with Iran Barkley.
Okay.
Super middle. He just took Iran Barkley apart because he was coming up from middleweight to 168, where Barkley reigned champ, and it was considered he has to move around the ring and bounce around. James stood right in the pocket, and I mean, when it comes to making a mother sucker miss and making a mother sucker pay, he is the best in the business at that. You know what I mean? And he just took him apart and all of that. And then another great fight too, because cruiserweights do not get most of the credit, but it was a unified middleweight showdown between at 190 pounds. This was probably circa 2003-ish.
Okay.
He was fighting a guy named Vasily Girov, a guy from Eastern Europe. I want to say he was Russian. The Siberian Tiger, Vasily Girov. That 12th round is one of the best rounds I've ever seen. That 12th round between Tony and Girov. And it was just a case where he was counterpunching and Girov was trying to smother him and not give him room to work. But like I mentioned before, James did not need a whole lot of room to work. He just was a master puncher, murderous body puncher, just very good. And he's the most relaxed fighter I've ever seen, because he's a guy that notoriously hated training. So he didn't run a lot. So to get ready for fights, he say it's no better way to get ready for fighting than fighting. He just loved to spar a million rounds. Now you hear him talk these days, perhaps he shouldn't have done that, but he's just the guy. He never gets tired, because like some guys like De La Hoya, Tyson, guys like that, they get tired over the fight because they're so tight and so intense the entire fight. Whereas James is like totally calm, totally relaxed, and once he gets in his groove, he can go all night long because he's just a natural fighter, born to fight, and that's James. And then we already gave the superlatives to the other guy, Roberto Durán. He could do it. He just missed the skills, pay the bills once again. He could do it all. He could fight inside. He was a master ring general of making you or forcing you, with the exception of the second Sugar Ray fight. He's a master at forcing you to fight his fight.
Yeah. So next up we have athleticism. Okay. And we've went over these two guys. They are Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard. Okay. Athleticism personified with these two. Muhammad Ali, the best adjective I can use with them is fluidity. Okay. Very fluid guy. Speed, unprecedented for a heavyweight as far as his footwork and his overall athleticism is concerned. Quick combinations, led with a jab that opponents struggle to even see. Okay. Footwork, lateral movement, and was constantly on his toes. Okay. His reflexes and stamina, second to none. So, and as far as Sugar Ray Leonard is concerned, of course, once again, elite hand speed, shift from measured pace to quick attacks in mere seconds, footwork for smooth and balance, ability to protect and create angles and different things. Overall explosiveness was fast twitch athleticism. These guys are just athletic marvels in the boxing ring. And to have a fighter with that attribute, that both of these guys is truly remarkable when you talk about Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yes, and I'm gonna get to something in just a moment. But Muhammad Ali, he was just a guy, especially in that Cassius Clay era. Like I mentioned before, there are always things like when Jordan had the hair on his head, when Bird had the mullet, when Dr. J had the
fro,
when he had the big fro, big fro. Those guys, like same thing here. When Muhammad Ali, whenever you see him in the black and white film, that's a bad dude there. I mean, because he had footwork, foot speed, and hand speed of a middleweight. And that was just totally perplexing and befuddling these heavyweights, because that was never seen before. Enough about him. Now, in terms of athleticism, I want to make an amendment and call an audible on this.
Okay.
I think the second guy, most and probably the most athletic guy I've ever seen in a boxing ring is Roy Jones, probably.
Okay.
I would say Roy. Roy had obviously all of the attributes. You can't go wrong with Sugar either, but I think the best athlete I've ever seen inside a boxing ring is Roy Jones. He could he had foot speed, hand speed. He was just strong as an ox, fast as the wind, just everything. This is the guy, for Christ's sakes, that one day he was in a professional, one of those lower professional basketball leagues. On a day of a fight, the dude flew and played his professional basketball game that day, and then flew to Vegas that night and fought. Both in the same day. He did it. He did them both in the same day. And if that's not, I think he scored like 15 points in the basketball game, and then came home. Then came to Vegas that night and knocked the dude out. It's like
that's impressive. That is truly impressive.
Insane. I mean, just an insane athlete, and just probably overall the best athlete I've ever seen inside a boxing ring.
Okay, moving on to the chin. Okay, we already talked about Muhammad Ali and his overall toughness, hardly ever getting knocked down. Okay. But the other person that we talked about, and I think that, and also another one of my all-time favorite boxers, Marvin Hagler. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Marvin Hagler had this impressive chin, could take punishment, durability off the chain, 62-3-2 overall, 52 knockouts, ability to absorb punishment, granite chin, never knocked out, ability to take clean shots, physical toughness and conditioning, and overall mental toughness. That was marvelous Marvin Hagler, his snapshot, or his overall snapshot of his career.
Marvin Hagler, he had the Rock of Gibraltar for a chin, man. It's just like
you heard about that, man.
I've only seen him stunned once.
Really?
And he wasn't really he wasn't hurt like on the verge of being knocked out. I've only seen him stunned once, and it was very early in that first round against Thomas Hearns. He ate one of them right hands. You could see it visibly stunned him. But then he just came up and just tell you how maniacal he was. He was like, he said, how you wasn't hurt? He told Tommy, I just was coming at you like Pac-Man. Pac-Man was popular at the time. I just kept chomping at you until it was no more left, man. I just kept coming. So I've never seen him hurt. He just had one of the all-time great chins. And like I said before, he's a guy that could easily be, like, in terms of fight adaptability, in terms of fight versatility, he could easily be in that, because he could fight orthodox and southpaw. But the special thing about him was a lot of times he would switch from one to the other, from right hand to left hand, in the middle of the exchange sometimes.
Wow.
He would switch, like you see him, he's like, if you're rumbling on the inside, he would switch from one to other in the exchange, which is dangerous to do, but he was just so good, he could do it and get away with it. And then as a adversary, you're a guy, he's a guy, you have to be wary of when a guy switches. Because, for example, you just mentioned a moment ago that James Toney knocked out Michael Nunn like in the 11th round. James Toney was losing every round, but James is a right-handed fighter. But when they was fighting, James swung a right hand at him, and Michael Nunn evaded it. Then James had switched to southpaw, and so Michael Nunn didn't gauge the distance right. He hit him with overhand left that Michael Nunn never saw, and that was the beginning of the end. So you have to be, that's a very dangerous thing if you don't pick up when your guy has switched. But one of the all-time great chins. He's fought Leonard. He fought Leonard. He fought Hearns. He fought Durán. And one of my favorite fights of Marvin Hagler, the fight with John the Beast Mugabe, man. He just Mugabe was 28-1 with 28 knockouts, many of which were brutal in fashion. And I mean, they went to war that night, and John the Beast Mugabe threw everything except for the boat at him, man. And it's just like, and I mean, he shook it off and stopped Mugabe. And you understand, like a lot of times in boxing, you can lose your prime in one night. We alluded to that last year regarding the Chavez and Mildred Taylor fight, but that also happened in this fight where he beat him so bad that Mugabe was never the same after that fight.
And just to get a little snapshot about Ali, exceptional punch resistance. We talked about the Joe Frazier and the Thrill in the Manila, the rope-a-dope against George Foreman, fast recovery, balanced reflexes, mental toughness. There was just a personification of the chin, with Muhammad Ali. Just an absolute, again, other than the time that Frazier knocked him down, that's the only time that I could recall. There might have been another time that Muhammad Ali was actually knocked down.
But okay, look at this. Sonny Liston.
Yeah.
Joe Frazier 3 times. Ken Norton
twice.
Ken Norton twice. George Foreman, Ernie Shavers, Larry Holmes, and even he was washed up then. He had no business fighting. But even in his last fight, which he absolutely had no business doing, Trevor Burbeck, these are fearsome and murderous punchers. And to your point, he was only knocked down by Joe Frazier pretty much.
Yeah. Next up, we got punchcraft, which we pretty much divided into 3 different categories. Counter shots. Talked about these 2 already, James Toney and Floyd Mayweather. Okay, as far as counter shot, quickly talk about them.
Like counter shots, man, like I mentioned before, these are 2 of the best at seamlessly mixing offense and defense simultaneously. Because like I told you before earlier, these days, and pretty much in recent history, it seems like they switch off almost like football. We on offense this time, we on defense this time. And that's not how boxing should be. It should be more of a fluidity to someone's game, where it's like they always, even if you're being defensively responsible, they're always looking for openings. But the thing is, they're masters of distance, so they always maintain their punching distance. So even when you miss, they're in range to immediately make you pay a dear price for that. So, and then they just have every counter shot in the book: jabs, hooks, shovel hooks, up jabs. Jab to the body. I mean, we talking right hands, a right hook, which you don't see a right hook often, but it's especially effective against a southpaw fighter, or you fighting against a southpaw, that straight right hand right down the pipe, body shots, able to fight inside and find small little openings. Because Floyd was very good as well at generating a lot of power without needing a lot of room in order to do so. So they were both master counter punchers. And then, especially in the case of Floyd Mayweather, you remember, especially in the Money Mayweather days, right?
Right.
Everybody would say, well, you need to swarm him and fight him and make him and a lot of activity. I'm like, his style is designed. That's exactly what he wants.
Exactly.
Because you come pressuring him, like you mentioned before, you want the opponent to play a role in their own demise. You're making it simple for him, because you're just creating. He doesn't even have to create the openings. You're creating all of the openings yourself. And he's just going to stand there and pick you apart and take advantage of them when you come with that over aggressive style. And he always hit hard enough. You notice people didn't just run through him. Well, he doesn't punch hard. Well, apparently he does, because you never see nobody just try to run through and just maul him for a full 12 rounds. So apparently he does.
So next up, we have, along with counter shots, we have something called an uppercut. Okay. You have George Foreman down for, as for one of the greatest uppercuts ever. One of his underrated punches is a power punch for him. He would lift opponents upright. Okay. And he had heavy hands with extreme leverage. Not as flashy as the person that we're about to talk about, but it was highly effective. The person we're talking about, and it's almost ludicrous to wait until this late to talk about him, But Mike Tyson, we've
right.
talked about Tyson kind of like in passing, but this is the first time we really did a deep dive on Iron Mike. 50-6 overall, 44 by knockout, lethal for several factors. We're talking about his uppercut. Created an opening and slipped punches and moved from side to side. He would throw it from close range and combine it with hooks, left hook to the body and a right uppercut to the head. And then he'd come back with a right hook with a left uppercut. Explosive mechanics, capable of lifting opponents off of their feet with the uppercut. So you got two guys here, Mike Tyson and George Foreman, who could literally lift people up off the ground with their uppercut, which is sheer power. Okay? And Mike Tyson, as many times that I done got knocked out playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out on Nintendo when I was in high school, from a video game standpoint, I've learned that firsthand. So Mike Tyson, George Foreman, all-time greatest uppercuts.
Yeah, but on Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, man, you got to get past the first 30 seconds, man.
Yeah.
That's the key. Because if he touch you in the first 30 seconds, even if you block it, you out for the fight.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mike Tyson, okay, this is a recurring theme once again. This is a guy, you said we're just not talking about him, right? He's a guy, look, intimidation. He could have been there.
Could have been there.
Marketability.
Could have been there.
Especially in his prime, hand speed. He could have been there. Overall punching power. He could have
Definitely could have been there.
Ring presence. Because like a lot of times, speaking of his ring presence, especially at his apex, he used to have guys beat before they even sang the national anthem. They would be so terrified of him that the fight would already be won before they ring the opening bell to begin the bout.
Right.
Speaking of his ring presence, and he had a very good chin too. But we're talking about his uppercut. He was had a very, very explosive uppercut. And to your point, sometimes he'll touch to that body and then rip the uppercut with the other hand. But sometimes what he would do would throw people off, which is what kind of befell Trevor Burbeck a little bit. He touched him to the body. Touched him to the body with that right hand. He dropped that left hand, and then he snuck that right uppercut right through his guard, and boom, and he got a 3-1 deal because he fell over 3 times. You know what I mean? And just very explosive uppercut, especially in his early days when he was under Customato and he was being trained by Kevin Rooney. Very explosive, because what really made him dangerous at that time was he was a combination power punching counter puncher. So literally people would be scared to throw shots at him because he would slip, and then he was just throwing 3-punch combination napalm bombs basically.
Right.
So you have no shot. You're lucky to be able to take one of those, let alone a 3-punch combination over and over again, or something like that. So very good fighter, very explosive uppercut. And usually the point you touched upon earlier, a lot of times guys would have very good uppercut with one hand or the other. Like Lennox is very good with another guy that could be all over this list, Lennox Lewis.
Right.
Very good left uppercut. But both of these guys, both Tyson and Foreman, they had very fast, very accurate, and very powerful uppercuts. With either hand, they could hit it from the outside, which you're really not supposed to do. But if you got the guy hurt enough, you can. And then definitely it was very potent and devastating on the inside as well.
Okay, so to round out the punchcraft, we got body shots. Okay, and the two guys that you have here, we kind of touched on one of them a little bit, and it's Julio Cesar Chavez, 107, 6-2, 86 knockout, world titles in 3 divisions, elite body punching, broke opponents down round by round until their resistance just gave away. Okay. And with his body shots, he was known for having sharp, short, compact hooks, patience and timing rather than speed, punch while moving forward, and relentless pressure. Okay. And then the other guy that you have is Mike McCallum, the body snatcher. Love that nickname.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
49-5-1 with 36 knockouts. And he coined, and I love this phrase, you kill the body, the head will follow. Flashy, precision, coming with a different types of variety. And this guy, Mike McCallum, he's not really talked about as much, but He's exactly right. If you kill the body, the head will follow. If the guy can't breathe, he can't fight. And that's
Yes,
exactly
sir.
the way he did it.
Yes, sir. I mean, but man, starting off with um Julio Cesar Chavez, first thing I want to say about him is the different mentality in the fighters of that day. And I'm talking from a marketability standpoint, right?
Okay.
Because I was first introduced to Julio Cesar Chavez. Well, I used to see him on like the networks like CBS and all of that. But most notably, he was with Don King Promotions, who also promoted Mike Tyson. So he was 100-0, 100-1, and the one should have been a loss to Pernell Whitaker. But anyway, he was a guy that everybody used to see him a lot of times when Tyson have a fight, he would be the co-feature on the undercard, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
You would see him, a lot of his fights would be on Mike Tyson undercards. And he's a guy of his caliber, of his resume, and of his standing, willing to be a co-feature to obviously a bigger star.
Right.
And, obviously willing to play his role, right?
Mhm.
Whereas you got guys now, well, they haven't they have a fight, they can't even go wood. They can't even put butts in seats. Well, I
Right.
need this and I need to be on pay-per-view and all that. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, he put in work and then he got to the place where he could headline his own cards. But
Right.
he put in work first. So when
Right.
he went out
paid
on
his
his own,
dues. He paid his
his
dues.
dues. So when he got out there, sure,
Right.
back in them days, fight $24.99, sure, click him, yeah. Cesar Chavez, no problem. You know what I mean? Sure. Like the fights with Hector Camacho, Pernell Whitaker, Meldrick Taylor, Aaron Duplessis, all of those different guys, right? But he was a masterful body puncher and also very underrated defensively because he could really subtly, like I told you before, like slipping, like a lot of guys, you don't have to make the guy miss by a lot. Just make him miss. That way you're still in there. He'll come forward, you throw that jab, he'll slip that jab. Now, next thing you know, he advance, he get that real estate without having to pay that tax. Now he right inside where he want to be, weighing you out to the body. Now, he was a guy who was a power puncher, but unlike Tommy Hearns at times, unlike George Foreman and Ernie Shavers and Mike Tyson, he wasn't a one-shot knock guy. He wasn't a one-shot knockout guy. He was a guy that relied on a war of attrition, but he was very technical pressure fighter, and he would just wear you down. Because at first a guy might be fast, he getting them fast combinations off on him, and then it's like, man, this dude wearing Cesar Chavez out. Then the same dude, you get around that 7th round. It's like, you get around that 7th round, he's no longer fresh. He's no longer as fast as Cesar Chavez is, just banging away at will and just breaking him down. Now, another thing about Chavez as well, he's another guy that could have been in another category on this list in terms of chin, because he had one of their all-time great chins as well. I think, once he got late in his career, he had a couple of fights with De La Hoya where he suffered some cuts, but Oscar was like 22. He was 38. Then he got, I want to say one of his last fights, he got knocked out cold by Costa Zoo from Australia, a great fighter from Australia and all of that. But he was well in the twilight of his career then. But he was just a tremendous fighter, tremendous left hook to the body. And most of your notable Mexican fighters, they're gonna have that left hook to the body, because when it comes to that liver shot to the body, our Mexican brethren, they're the best in the business. And at the left hook to the body, they're like all of you, like Marcos Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, Salvador Sanchez, Canelo Alvarez. They're just Juan Manuel Marquez. They're just masters at the left hook to the body. They're just masters at it.
Okay, and talk about Mike McCallum. That guy there,
the body snatcher, man. Just
perfect nickname.
Just tremendous fighter. Like at that time, similar to how we were talking about Wilfredo Benitez was kind of
Right.
like the fifth king. It was
Right.
kind of like a similar ordeal with him. At the time, you had it was Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones, James Toney kind of at the top.
Mhm.
He was just as good, but he was just below that in terms of
Right.
notoriety. And he was a guy tremendous. He was just a tremendous everything. Once again, out of that vaunted Crunk Gym out of Detroit, under the tutelage of the amazing late Emmanuel Stewart. Under that tutelage, and he just was a tremendous body puncher, but he was just a tremendous overall fighter, just tremendous technician, tremendous defensively, could slip, could block shots, could parry, and he could hit to the head with either hand, but he really his specialty was really banging on that drum, man. That was his specialty to wear fighters down. And one of his most notable moments is a guy that could have been in the one punch power category, a guy you may have heard of, I think he was from Jamaica, a guy named Julian Jackson.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
He used to Julian Jackson, I've seen him with either hand. He'll hit a guy with a left hook or a right hand, and then he'll just point to the canvas like timber as the guy falls out.
Down. Yeah.
He fought Julian Jackson, and they're like, he has to stay away from him and all of that. But he went right to Julian Jackson, pressuring him and banging that body. And most punchers, they don't like have the fight going backwards because they can't generate as much power.
They can't generate any power, right?
And that's what he did. He just went right to him, fought him dead in his chest, bodying him, muscling him around inside and banging to that body, and quickly broke him down and quickly dismantled him and stopped him in two.
Wow.
Great fighter, the body snatcher. And then another thing, if you really want to see high level boxing on both sides, watch both fights that he and James Toney had. It's absolute masterclass, both guys. I mean, it was both of them was swinging away. Sometimes they would swing multiple combinations and exchanges, and nobody land nothing. And they're both right there, shoulder to shoulder in front of each other.
Right.
And nobody can land the glove on the other because they were both just that superb in terms of defensive mastery, timing, and anticipation and things like that. Just total mastery. You watch both fights he had with James Toney. Just beautiful boxing, high level, the best of the best.
So that concludes the list. So we're gonna go through the list one more time as far as who do we have for all the different traits and attributes. Okay. Diligence. We have Floyd Mayweather and Bernard Hopkins. Intimidation, Sonny Liston and George Foreman. Marketability, Muhammad Ali and Floyd Mayweather. Fight adaptability. So we got for ring IQ, Floyd Mayweather and Terrence Crawford. Mental quickness, we have Floyd Mayweather and Terrence Crawford again. Fight versatility, Terrence Crawford, and this time Roberto Durán. Defense, Floyd Mayweather and Pernell Whitaker. Hand speed, Roy Jones and Sugar Ray Leonard. Jab, Larry Holmes and Thomas Hearns. Left hook, Joe Frazier and Sugar Ray Robinson.
Hold it right there.
Yes, sir.
Quick honorable mention, left hook.
Okay.
Felix Tito Trinidad.
Okay.
Yes, sir. He's honorable mention in terms of that left hook. And then I'll take care of the right hand because I have one more honorable mention there.
Okay.
Right hand, we have Joe Louis. Right hand, we have Joe Louis and Thomas Hearns, right?
Yes.
Honorable mention there. The great Alexis Arguello.
Okay.
In terms of right hand. Ask Boom Boom Mancini. Ask Boom Boom Mancini about that right hand. You know, honorable mention. You know what I mean? Okay,
honorable mention.
Carry away.
Okay. Overall punching power, we got Ernie Shavers and George Foreman. Fighting grit, competitive obsession, heart and composure, Muhammad Ali and Evander Holyfield. Ring presence and inside fighting, James Toney and Roberto Durán. Athleticism, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, and you also gave a shout out and honorable mention to the great Roy Jones. Chin, Marvin Hagler, Muhammad Ali. Punchcraft, which we divided into 3 different categories. Counter shots, James Toney and Floyd Mayweather. Uppercuts, Mike Tyson and George Foreman. And body shots, Julio Cesar Chavez and Mike McCallum. That's our list, ladies and gentlemen. Chuck, this is an awesome show, and I really appreciate you coming up with this idea. And Dude, I loved it.
Yes, sir. Had a lot of fun, man. Ran a bit longer than usual, but folks bear with us.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I feel that the conversation was very fruitful and very interesting and entertaining. And I'm sure it's a whole lot that hopefully you guys can learn from this. And I'm always open to learn. I know you always say leave comments. If it's some people that you think, feel free to leave some comments and tell me why, because I'm always open. I mean, this is not exactly 100% proof list, because like I mentioned, a lot of these guys could be in various categories. I just went with what I went with. So that's all I have to say.
All right, but Chuck, I really appreciate you dropping by, and we talking about this, and then we're going to close out the show right after we take a short break. This is the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast here on the Sports History Network. Thank you so much once again for joining us here at the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. This podcast comes to you from the Bill King Memorial Studio in the sports wing of TM4 Enterprises, located in suburban Atlanta in the shadow of Stone Mountain. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to get new episodes whenever they are released. Also, if you would like to contact the show for perhaps episode ideas, maybe tell us how we did, or just to say hi, please email us at historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. That email address, once again, historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. As always, please don't forget us. Don't keep us a secret. Please remember to tell people about us. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors. Hell, tell a passerby on the street if you think they like sports history. And it would really, really help us out. Thanks again for joining. Peace.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website, seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.